go. I'd like to welcome everybody out to Kaysville's Planning Commission tonight, and we welcome you all here, and we have a good agenda going on today, so we'll just get started so we can get it through in a reasonable time. The first one on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of September 14th.
I'll move that we approve minutes from September 14th, 2017.
I'll second that. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have a conditional use permit for a major home occupation B at 1497 South, 650 East for Brooke Bennett.
Okay. As introduction to the item, in this application, you can see here on the map and in your packet, located in the mid-block off of 650 East. I visited with Ms. Bennett. She's a newly licensed esthetician. She'd be taking clients at her home by appointment only. Generally, appointments last an hour, possibly two, depending on what they're up to at the house. She figured that maybe 5 appointments a day is probably what she expects to be doing. There's probably some give and take with that, depending on how busy she gets. But having visited with her, looking over the site, staff believes it's appropriate to recommend approval without additional conditions based on my observations.
Is Ms. Bennett here? You want to step up if we have a question, and if not, we'll just get to meet you.
She's so excited.
So have you done this before?
Been here?
No.
Oh.
Had a business.
No, I haven't had a business before.
Okay. Any questions?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Parking is usually a big issue, but I mean, 5 appointments throughout the day, I don't foresee that being an issue, so I think we're good.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I think it sounds great. I will move that we approve the conditional use permit for a major home occupation B for Brooke Bennett at 1497 South, 650 East.
Second.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Good luck, Brooke.
Okay, number 3 is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing.
If you'd like, we can give a quick introduction to it so the public knows what we're looking at, and then we'll allow for the comment. Just in brief with this one, it's a request to rezone just over 1.5 acres of property off of Ruche Lane. That's currently an A1 agricultural zone. The applicant's requesting the RA, which is essentially half-acre residential agricultural zoning, in order to potentially create some new lots, and then also with the consideration of the PRUD overlay zone for what's anticipated to be a private street subdivision. You can see the property here near Angel and the roundabout in Ruche Lane. And what the applicant has requested essentially seems to work. It's a little unique from the way that the concept plan's laid out. Based on it has the driveway that bisects the property through the middle of the lots, which is fine per the ordinance. Most often we see a layout of this nature where the lots are on the edge of the drive and would be split. But what's been shown does still include areas that are large enough for home footprints on all the lots that are available. Based on that, again, it is open for a public hearing, so any comment that you would like to take. And we're just looking for a recommendation from the Planning Commission this evening to pass along to the City Council as to whether or not this is appropriate for this area and consistent with the general plan.
Okay, thank you. We will open it up for public comment if there are any here that would like to speak on that. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up to the commissioners for comments.
Well, the only comment or question I have, with that drive lane coming in, I guess from a fire and life safety standpoint, it meets all the requirements.
Yeah, what we expect to probably have to work through with the final plat is figure out the turnaround. The existing driveway is not wide enough per spec, so his anticipation would be to widen it to meet the minimum standards that it can do that. And we'd have to make sure that the fire department is on approval with the turnaround variety, but there is space to provide one, so those details still to come.
Yeah, that's really the only concern I had with it.
Yeah.
So it's just creating two, I mean, this is I suppose the PRUD plat or proposal. It's just creating the two. I mean, or three technically, but two are getting the PRUD.
Correct.
Would be getting.
Yeah, there's an existing barn on the property on the northwest side of the property. It would remain in an agricultural zoning district on its own lot. And then, as stated, there would be two new lots created towards the east end of it where two new homes might be built. Each exceeds half an acre in size.
So even though this preliminary plat illustrates this other section with this large barn on it, that's not part of the rezone.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all property he owns, but you're absolutely right. It would not be rezoned.
All right.
Is he on the house that's right in front?
He owns a home just west of the barn.
Oh, west of it,
Yeah.
down here.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Ready for a motion?
Sure.
I'll move that we grant rezone of 1.56 acres of property from A1 light agriculture to RA residential agricultural zoning district to include the PRUD overlay zone for Mr. Bob Mason at approximately 860 South Roush Lane.
I'll second that.
Aye.
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 Okay, we have another public hearing for rezone of 0.46 acres of property at approximately 560 North Main Street.
Okay. So again, with the rezone, as a quick introduction before we turn it to the public. This property you can see here on the screen, and again in your packets, just under half an acre. It's essentially some remnant on the development to the east of it, the Ovation Homes and cottages at Hyde Park. At the time that property was developed, it was all previously general commercial. As part of the development and process to put the homes in, it was rezoned, and a line was drawn. You can see on the zoning map here up against Main Street to retain some commercial frontage. The property owner believes that it makes sense to move forward with the possible residential type use on that corner, and so has requested a rezone. The R2 zoning district that's being requested matches some of the existing zoning that is within the Hyde Park development. Would allow as many as 5 units potentially on half an acre, depending on the configuration. No specific plat or anything to consider at this point, but looking for a consideration and recommendation from the Planning Commission as to whether the change from general commercial use, which is in short office retail type users, to a residential type use, and whether or not that's appropriate for the area and consistent with the general plan.
Thank you. Okay, we will open the public hearing if there's anyone that would like to speak on this. We're running out of agenda items. Okay.
I'm with the Dell Corporation that is bringing this forward. The only
Would you
thing
state your name?
Duncan Barlow, and I'm with the Dell Corporation.
Thank you.
The only reason I kind of changed that is we bought several of those properties along the main street there, and I could see where those go commercial, but on this one here, where you got a kind of a private road going back in, I was told it was a public road, but I come over to the city just to double check today, and we come up with a conclusion it is a private road.
So Hyde Park Drive is, or Park Lane is?
Is a private road there. So it's not a public road. And the only thing I didn't want to see is I've been involved with some of the other developments on patio homes, and where you have the monument on the south side of the road going in, I just thought it'd be more appropriate to have the homes come right out to the road, so it's so people know that it's what type of a development is there. The other lots we have going down the road, I don't have any problem with those being commercial. I could see that, but I just thought that when the business went in next to us next door, for quite a while we just had a lot of people that were parking out in front of this lot, parking along the private drive, and I just thought, for someone coming into that development and having cars parked along there, Now, I know the new business that went in to the north of us put some parking behind their place, and so they have parking there. But I was thinking that if I developed it as commercial, I'm afraid that you're still going to have that same problem, that if they don't have enough parking spots, they'd be parking out on this private road, which they shouldn't be doing. So what we were looking at doing, and I talked to the president of the Homeowners Association last night, I'd like to put in maybe 3 lots there. And just so you have the residential on one side, coming all the way out. The homes that are in that R2 those are attached, but I think that the single dwellings, that are separate, I think would be a little better. And so that was my thinking behind asking for a change in the zoning. I think it just make it a little more appropriate. All the ground that we have going, like I say, south of that Hyde Park or
Hyde Park Lane.
Hyde Park Drive, go commercial. We don't have any problem with that. So, okay.
Okay, thank you. Would you mind if we continued with the public hearing?
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll have you come back up. I'm sure we'll have questions. Anybody else that would like to express? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And if you would like to come up, Mr. Barlow, and we may have some questions for you. Okay. I did have one question. The house just to the north, is that owned by you as well?
No, it's not.
I noticed that there was public access or handicap and that staff in back. Is that a commercial building?
They're using that as commercial, yes. Between us and the Tasty Donuts, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, so they ended up putting parking in the back, which that did help out with that. But at first there was, it just seemed like there was a lot of cars parking out in front and then also on this private drive. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that, I think if it was a lot like that to the north of us, you're kind of confined and you have to go behind. Here, you can still go behind, but we really don't have access out to that private drive coming in, and unless the HOA granted that to you. But I just thought that it would be a lot cleaner to just have some homes along that side instead of a business, and then having the possibility of overflow and parking. Depends on what type of business went in there. So.
Do you also own the properties to the south?
Yeah, we have the first house, which to the south. And then south of that, there's a little like a cinder block home. We don't have that, but then we had the old home, which we have sold that. What I call the cottage. It's kind of a cute little home, and then we're just in the process of starting to go fix up the yellow brick home, which is south of that.
So those will, you say you can see those going commercial, but really they're still residences.
Well, they're still residential, but someone could come in and put a business in it. The yellow brick home, we're kind of trying to prepare that for someone who wants to have like an antique store or something that could use the house there. So, yeah.
And you own this strip that's here? That's, I'm guessing, what, 40, 50 feet?
Well,
or is that the HOA?
I was looking at the map the city had because I had a surveyor go out and survey our properties. And I thought he was off about 10 feet from what it was disclosed to me. But that on that side of the road, the HOA owns that, yes. I just, the boundary I thought was supposed to be like 10 feet further to the north on where that black line is, but yeah, they still have, you know, I'm not sure what it is, you know, probably close to 30 feet coming back. So that's part of the HOA, yes.
How long ago was it when you came in for the approval of Hyde Park?
What's that?
How long's it been since Hyde Park came in, since you got the approval?
You know, if I had to take a guess, I would have thought it might have been, I'm just guessing, probably 3-4 years ago.
4 years?
It was in the time I've been here.
Yeah, because it seemed like I couldn't remember how long, but I don't remember why the city council determined to leave this section commercially zoned.
I think they wanted to get more commercial, you know, and I understand that. I've talked to them over the city, but and that's why I said I don't see any problem here, because I could see someday someone's going to come in and say, okay, we're going to take these out and do a strip center or something along there. But where you have this one that comes out, you got the trees, you got the grass area, you know, that they have part of the HOA on the south side of the road. I'm a developer, but you know, we've done commercial, we've done residential, but I just thought the best thing would have been having the homes there. I think it'd be a lot cleaner, and I think it would, from talking to some of the people in the development back there in that Hyde Park, you know, I think everyone I've talked to says they'd rather see it as houses there.
So if there's homes that go all the way up to Main Street, I'm assuming you would probably face them to the south, and then maybe have a fence or something that gives some privacy.
Well, I'm sure we'd have to fence the back, and my thinking was having, say, 3 lots. The third lot would be a bigger lot, and maybe put some landscaping and stuff on the side so it looks nice. So it's basically you'd have the 3 homes there. It goes right back up in there, and then of course you have your monument on the south side, right there, and then they've got the grass area that leads back into the development area.
I'm just thinking about privacy and safety of that end house on Main. If you know, just wondering about that.
If you come up to Layton, you know, go another 2 or 3 blocks, they have like a little condo project, I think, and they come out to the road too there. So this is the first one I've seen with about 7 developments of these patio homes that they did not come out to the road. This is the first one I've seen where the homes started back in a couple hundred feet, of the ones that we've been involved with. So.
It's hard to give up commercial land.
Yeah, that, you know, I understand that, and like I say, but where you got a private road on one side, if it would have been a public road, you know, then maybe it might have been, I think, a little different. Then I think you could have used that road a little better and coming in, but you know, I mean, it could go either way, to be honest. I just thought that the best use would be to, you know, for the patio homes. So. Who would have ever thought 30 years ago that patio homes would be so popular?
They're very popular.
Well, and you know, my thought is, if you could zoom out to the zoning map, just get a bigger, broader. That's good. Is you know, right now, I assume the indication, at least that I've seen, is those properties. Maybe they are. Have you been marketing these properties, the ones that you own south here? Have you been marketing those at all?
Yeah, we've just put them up for. There's one up for sale right now. Yes.
Okay, and the reason I ask is I don't know that there is a whole lot of interest or demand commercially right now, but when this parcel, if and when this parcel gets developed commercially, and it's only a matter of time, it may be a long time, who knows, there would likely be more demand for other of these commercial properties to fill in, and there would be more demand, and they would look more attractive, and it might create a different type of commercial zone or commercial area than there currently exists. So the question kind of is in our mind, at least to me, do we want to keep this in anticipation of that future commercial that seems relatively likely in my mind to come in, or do we want to just sort of change it? It seems more short-sighted to change it now in my mind. If we're taking the longer view, which I kind of think we have to in some cases, it seems to make more sense to keep it as is. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
I agree. Especially when you read, about, where is it? About that we have said along Main Street to keep the commercial along the Main Street.
And, this corner parcel, I think, has been marketed for a while now, and it sat there. And like I said, I think that one will become a much more marketable if and when this gets developed. And again, that may be a long time, but I think that's what zoning and planning is about, is thinking a little more long term.
Well, and I think you're right. If the piece went across the street, it just doesn't seem like there's been a whole lot of demand for the commercial over there right now. But that's why I just, it wasn't because there's not a demand, but I think just the fact that you've got the green area that comes out to Main Street, the road, the additional 30 feet that's landscaped. True, this would just kind of designate that as an entrance going in, and but I was thinking about the people live in there that, like I say, if people start parking out on that road, it's only, I think it's only about 27 feet. What did we look at today? 27 feet of asphalt.
It's about a 27-foot right of way, so probably.
So it just seems like a little smaller road anyway going in, but whatever you guys like. I mean, I in my opinion, I think it'd be better to have some homes there, but like you say, times change, and maybe down the road there might be a demand for some of that. But that's why we had some of these other properties over there. We feel that hopefully we'll wait and see what happens on those. So
I think as we do the general plan and the master plan, as we've gone through that, we've looked at and identified the areas for use, for commercial type developments and growth. I mean, this is the main corridor for it, and you got a space next door that is commercial use. We've got even some of the homes that you've talked about. It sounds like there may be some commercial use potentially in some of those. I tend to think long term as the city develops, this is kind of the natural course for some of the growth of commercial. Is some of the kind of how I tend to think, looking long term at it.
Well, especially, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Especially to the west too. I mean, Market Street, Borough Street, that area there. I mean, that's one of the most commercial parts of Kaysville. I mean, that whole area that's tucked off back in here. So, I mean, do we want to go populate Main Street with houses? I'm not sure if that's the correct course of action. Like we said, we're talking planning and zoning and that. We want to think down the road and things along those lines. So it will be just a matter of time before that parcel on the corner of Mutton Hollow and Main Street ends up getting sold. Something goes in there. There isn't much general commercial throughout Kaysville, except, and it's pretty much confined to this particular area of the city. So,
okay.
It's kind of a unique spot because there is residential, but then it's also surrounded primarily by a lot of the commercial. And I think I can see why the city council proposed to leave that as commercial. I think looking forward, the future and the growth, and where do you allow for this type of growth?
Right. And the other thought I had, I guess the last thought I had, is this parcel next to it with the house that's been sort of remodeled and is being used commercially. if this were rezoned as is being proposed, and then houses go in, then it makes it much more difficult for this both of those parcels to be combined in the future and developed as one, and make it a bigger, one larger commercial lot that could be more marketable. Whereas if you keep this vacant and then this house is just here, then it might be more marketable to make it for a developer to come in and buy both of them and make it a more feasible commercial use.
Yeah.
So if you bring the R2 all the way down, then it just gets choppy right there.
I mean, it would make it almost an acre.
Well, and and I see that on the south side there, where we had 3 homes. The developer had sold one to a lady to help her out, but that kind of then ties our hands, because if we were to do something, you'd probably take that whole thing out, but there's one right in the middle that we have no control over. So, but whatever you guys like on that, I think it'd be better one way, and I don't think it would really affect down the road. But like you say, if you'd rather have it stay commercial, we'll try to do that.
Make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I will move that we recommend denial of a rezone of 0.46 acres from GC to R2 at 560 North Main Street.
Second. Aye.
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 Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time there.
Okay. Okay, we're on item number 5. We're on 5. Another public hearing. Would you like to explain?
Yes, the request is to rezone approximately 7.2 acres of property down on the west end of 200 North, just south of Angel Street, from its current general commercial zone to light industrial zone. Property, as I mentioned, is just west of Angel Street on 200 North. The area requested for rezone is outlined there in the yellow. As I mentioned, it's currently zoned general commercial. As you may recall, and recently there's been an office building built just to the east of the subject property. There's been a plat approved, another office building proposed, maybe even under construction on that parcel. So they've asked that the rest of the property be rezoned to light industrial to give them a little more flexibility on how the development could occur.
Okay, thank you. We'll open the public hearing. And let me tell you, there's a number of you here, so we're going to limit the...
If I...
Yes.
Could we perhaps give the developer an opportunity to speak first and maybe address some of the concerns that may alleviate some of the questions that maybe some of the public have?
Thank you. Okay, is the developer here?
Good evening. I'm Brett Wallen with AWA, here representing Terra Venture Development. In our application, we submitted a concept plan of what we would propose, and I think it may help alleviate some of the concerns that you may hear tonight. And first off, if there is opposition that is opposed to our project, we'd be glad to meet with them outside the meeting and review any concerns that they may have. But Andy, I don't know if you have this concept plan that could be shown, but let me hand these out.
Thank you.
Didn't ever see that.
No, we didn't.
We had heard.
Yeah.
We brought some extras. The plan that you see shows an expansion along 200 North. This project's at the southwest corner of Angel Street, 200 North. It expands along 200 North the current uses of office buildings, and then it anticipates the southern and westernmost part of this property as future for storage units. And these storage units would be planned to have a 24-hour on-site manager that would live at the facility on the second floor of the office. And this facility would be fully enclosed, so that we anticipate planning that the walls of the storage unit would actually be the screening mechanism from the adjacent properties. And one of the things that to note would be that we think that the uses are compatible. This is currently zoned general commercial, and so the only thing in the general commercial that's not allowed are these storage units concept as we read the code. We think that the uses are compatible and have limited impact on the proposed office. In other words, as we're able to enclose this development, that they will have no impact on our general commercial uses that are currently existing or planned in the future along 200 North. The units actually, the storage units, really provide minimal traffic. It's one of the least intensive uses in a general commercial zone. A lot of times the users would be anticipated to be on the west side of Kaysville. There are currently no storage units on the west side that are not up by the freeway. And we would try to be serving really the core west side residents to provide them those types of services that are currently needed. And anyway, we're really here to answer questions. We'd be glad to meet with any concerned residents outside the meeting, and look forward to trying to work with you to have a successful project.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open the public meeting. And as I started to say, we'd like the comments to be at 3 minutes, if you could. Lyle is going to be our watch.
My name is Dr. Grant Stevens. I live in one of the neighborhoods directly adjacent to the property in question. If you look at the zoning map for West Kaysville in general, we don't understand the consistency of rezoning this parcel as light industrial, as opposed to nearly all of the remaining properties are zoned as residential and agriculture. In addition, the concern for the spot zoning of this particular parcel as light agriculture, or light industry, excuse me. We're concerned for the value of our properties. There are a large number of homes that have been built recently directly adjacent to this parcel, and we're concerned about the safety of our children. There's a park directly across the street. There are several schools that are along this corridor, and there are several churches along this corridor where there would be traffic to. So we don't agree with this rezoning. Thanks.
Thank you.
I guess I had a question. Well, it's Isaac Geckeritz. In the current...
can you state your name again, please?
Isaac Geckeritz. In the current, the commercial properties that have been developed, we've required the park ship trees. Would those apply to the commercial properties that are on Main Street with this new plan, even though it's zoned light industrial? I don't know if you want to bring that up again. I see that you still have the commercial properties on Main Street. So would those commercial properties be under the same? Would you still require the parks of trees along 200 North, even though it's light industrial?
There is a slightly different standard for development in the light industrial zone.
Okay. What would be the differences?
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah, I can speak to that maybe. So much of the landscaping requirements are the same, whether it's commercial or industrial type development. However, the general commercial zone is subject to a building design standards that are not applicable in a light industrial zoning district.
Okay.
So that would probably be the primary difference, but such as things like trees or streetscape. For example, the Smiths Marketplace development and the Kaysville Business Park are all in the light industrial zone, and you'll see those elements in those areas as well as a general commercial.
So, just to confirm, so the commercial properties that he has there in front of, and I apologize, I just got braces in, so you can't hear what my S is. The commercial properties in front of the storage units would not have the same requirements as the one that's been already constructed.
Not as far as the building design requirements.
Building design.
However, if the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council would like to, as part of a development, through a development agreement, require certain standards, they're able to do that through specific agreements.
Okay. So that would be my concern, is that the commercial properties wouldn't follow the same standards that have been placed for the building that's there currently.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Brian Powell, and I wanted to represent, homeowners in the area who are building. Since I'm building a home just adjacent to here that will be finished in the next couple of months, and it's concerning. When you're looking for a place to live, you sort of go around and look at the property and whatnot, and then suddenly find out they're sort of changing the zoning laws right next to you, and that certainly would have affected my decision of putting a new home in. And there's a lot of areas just adjacent to this property where they're developing a lot of homes. And so my concern is that when a homeowner comes in and they're looking for a property and then they see a bunch of storage units or a lot of commercial facilities nearby, that deters them from coming in. Certainly that would have affected my decision as well. And so just from that perspective, I would be opposed to rezoning. Thank you.
Where's your home going in?
If you go down Angel Street a short distance, there's an Ivory home development just next to it. So I pass right by this almost every single day.
So it's not directly adjacent to it?
It's off to the corner, you're correct. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Casey Bullock. I'm just going to echo the same things that have been heard already, that this doesn't make sense for the type of area that we're in, especially with the development that's gone on. Light industrial has had somewhat of a rocky history within Kaysville, from what I hear. I know this isn't the same as the Puffer development, but we are concerned about our home values in this situation. And so, most of all, for what's being developed on that side of the town, this doesn't make sense to make it light industrial.
My name's Jason Peterson. I live just south of the proposed development area. I'm not a doctor like everybody else, but hopefully my opinion can still matter. But I'm obviously strongly opposed to the proposed zoning change as well. I think one of the primary issues that I have is that although the proposed plan looked decent and it was mostly commercial, strongly opposed to the storage sheds, obviously. But once it's changed, right, there's no guarantee that the current proposal is followed and things change once something has been rezoned. And I'd be very concerned about what actually is implemented. And then the other thing with industrial areas, this is an area where I work for a large industrial type company. We provide services. Oftentimes things are implemented quite well, and throughout the years, due to capital requirements and ongoing maintenance costs and things that are industrial tend to fall by the wayside because there isn't a need to reinvest the sustaining capital to keep it looking nice. That's not what drives the demand for this. And so this is residential homes everywhere. So to echo what's been said before, it doesn't fit for for the local community, and I don't see it adding any value to the citizens of West Kaysville. So,
thank you.
My name's Dean Wall. I oppose the rezoning of it. Just the fact that nothing was proposed to the city until just tonight. So if there's going to be a rezoning, I think we need to put that off until the future, till more research could be done into it. But bringing this development or their proposed development at the last minute, I don't like that idea. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Garner, and I live in Hill Farms, and I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said, but there is one point that the developer made when he spoke, and he said that they'd like to put the storage units in order to serve the people of West Kaysville, because there aren't any storage units in the West Kaysville area. Well, when I think about going to a storage unit, I don't think about going to a storage unit right near my nice neighborhood. I think about going to an industrial area to my storage unit. And so I don't think the fact that it's going to be a couple minutes away for us really is serving us. I think it's actually detrimental to our area. So also, I know there are a lot of people here, but there are a lot of people who are not here also who oppose this. I know that there was a petition put out, and I think the person who wrote the petition is here, so hopefully she'll speak about it. But that was signed by almost 300 people, and every single person that I've talked to in the adjoining neighborhoods is seriously against this. And I feel like because we are the residents of this area, we should definitely have the say and the voice, because this is what we have to live with for as long as we live here. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Rebecca Geckert, and I too am a resident of Hill Farms. And I want to just speak to quality of life. The people who have chosen to live in these neighborhoods out in West Kaysville, we chose to live there because of the beauty of the mountains to the east, the beautiful sunsets to the west. And I knew, signing my papers for my home, that this was a general commercial zoning. And I was okay with it. And I was heartened when I saw the beautiful pediatric care that went in. I felt like that business spoke to the community, it spoke to who we are out there, but putting in storage units and changing this to light industrial does not. This is not something that these homes, people have made great investments into these homes. The area is beautiful. People who don't even live in Kaysville tell me, oh my gosh, you live in Hill Farms? I love that neighborhood. They drive through Kaysville just to see these homes because they're charming and they're beautiful. And then all around us, not just in Hill Farms, there are beautiful neighborhoods all the way through. And I would just kind of echo what everything else is said as well. I totally agree with that and ask that this area not be rezoned to light industrial.
Thank you.
My name is Dennis Forbush. I live at 127 North Angel. So I live next to the Three Roses Ranch. And she is spot on about living in heaven. It's a beautiful place. The thought about having brick walls on property lines, is that a different zoning in this zoning versus commercial, or does that happen on commercial as well, where they can build right on the property line?
It could happen.
No setback.
It could happen in either zone.
Okay, in commercial. So nonetheless, for me, this is soon to be a gateway into Kaysville. And is that something you and all of us want to have as the gateway into Kaysville, is a commercial development with these kind of units? So just for me, no, I don't want it. I live on a farm, 4 acres with horses. It is heaven. Please leave it that way.
Thank you.
My name is Nathan White. I live in the Hill Farm subdivision as well. And I want to call the Commission's attention to some things that were said in the developer's presentation here. I think it's really telling that when he talked about there being storage units here, and of course my understanding from looking at this is that's the purpose of rezoning this, is to allow the storage units to be there. He mentions the storage units, and immediately the first thing out of his mouth after he says that is there's going to be fencing and 24-hour security, and there will be somebody watching the property at all times. The reason he felt the need to say that is because having a storage unit in this neighborhood is going to draw a criminal element. That's why that was the next thing out of his mouth. I think that's a concern. Quite frankly, we've had a rash of burglaries already in West Kaysville recently. We don't need to have traffic coming in and out of the neighborhood at all hours of the night, all hours of the day and night, potentially bringing additional problems. And regardless of how well this is fenced or screened away from the rest of the community, I think that's going to continue to be an issue. That's a concern for me. I have a kindergartner at Case Creek Elementary, which is just to the west of this proposed development. I have another one who will be a kindergartner next year, and they're going to be walking and biking to school. That's a concern also as in terms of the traffic situation, which quite frankly is not a good situation there for kids walking to and from school right now. Anyway, this proposed rezoning seems likely to exacerbate that. It seems likely to create additional problems. And so I would strongly urge the Commission to deny this request.
Thank you.
So I'm a little shorter. My name's Patricia Rawlings, and me and two other individuals put forth a petition to oppose the rezoning in this area. And some of the key highlights was because it's not the highest and best use of the property, it's inconsistent with the surrounding property, safety concerns, like many have already mentioned, home values, and also contrary to the 2014 general plan that is on the Kaysville City website. The big thing, we've only been here for 2 years in Kaysville, and we are excited for the growth, and we like the dental office and the doctor's office and the other offices that might go in. But whenever you suggest to rezone, you have to consider the worst possible case. Light industrial allows for a lot of things that we don't want around our families and around our neighborhood. I guess, I don't know, do you want me to read them, or I don't know if I need to, but it could be, any light industrial could be experimental research, testing laboratories, utility substations, manufacturing, compounding, processing of medical and dental instruments, scientific instruments, a lot of things that cause pollution, to the air, to the water, to our soil, and of course safety for the children in the neighborhood and the families there. Is Dr. Jones here? No? Okay, if you guys will permit, he is the doctor for KP, oh my gosh, where did I put it? Sorry. There it is, for KPDO Dentist and Orthodontist right there on 200 North. And he told me that I could read his statement about it. Is that okay if I do that? Okay. He said, I'm concerned with the scope of light industrial zoning change. I own and operate a pediatric dental and orthodontic practice on the property to the west, and I truly feel that this change would devalue my property and drive my patients to another location, to other locations that provide a friendlier environment. The adjacent home developments are gorgeous. Even light industrial buildings in this area would be an eyesore. Beyond these concerns, it is my understanding that this corner is the only remaining undeveloped commercial property in West Kaysville. As the community grows in the west, additional commercial services as well as tax revenues for the city will be advantageous. The city already planned for and created a light industrial area. This area is not yet fully developed, and as such, I can't see the need for more property to be zoned light industrial. So I think it's also important to take under consideration the thoughts of the business owners already there when you're considering your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had one question for you, actually. So, did you spearhead the petition?
Me and 2 others.
Okay, so let me ask you, so I took a look through that, and I saw addresses that are nowhere near Davis County or Kaysville. How did you preserve the integrity of that petition? Was everybody of voting age there? Did people duplicate? I saw residents in Salt Lake and Utah County. What's the rationale behind that, I guess?
Okay. Like the process.
A petition can be very broad sweeping and can be very, I used the term before and kind of got booed for it and that, but it can be cherry picked and it can be kind of, skewed and kind of altered and stuff, to kind of make it look, 300 people, that's great. But when you really take a look at it, I guess my question to you is, how is the integrity of that petition preserved when you delivered it here this evening?
So the process that we did was, once we've compiled it, we used the Go petition on the internet, and they recorded individuals' first and last name, email addresses, IP addresses, and yeah, there was one other thing, but
voting records.
Sorry, I don't think so. And then we shared it on our Facebook web pages, our emails to our neighbors and our friends, to all the neighborhoods, Hill Farms, Wellington Street, all of that. There weren't any duplicates, as far as names and email addresses, but yeah, I don't know if I can give you a better answer than that. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I was just kind of curious on how the methodology and the
how we did it
and the way that it was presented in that. I don't know a lot about Go petition. I've done petitions before where I've walked the street and
we thought in this century, in this age,
we voting age and a
yes,
voter and things along those
lines. With this time and age and cell phones and having the quick access, we thought we would do that. And
I get all that.
The petition, we didn't have a lot of time. It went public, I believe, on Friday, and a lot of us didn't hear about it until Saturday or Sunday. So it went on
so 5 days.
Tuesday morning at 10. So it has been maybe a day and a half.
Oh, okay.
Not very long.
Okay. All right.
Maybe I'd like to comment on it as well, because I think we all read the petition, we all saw it. Mm-hmm. Personally, I've been on the Planning Commission almost 8 years now. Usually when we get petitions or we get people, there's a lot of high emotion. We even get attacked. The City Council gets attacked. The City Administration gets attacked quite often. This one was, I thought, very well written. They stayed very civil, courteous. They hit a lot of, I think, pertinent points, trying to stay within, I guess, some parameters. And that area is, well, we've seen it from the emails we've received, the letters we've received. They're pretty passionate in that area. And I think it's really kind of, to me, was an example of how the process really should work when we come to these, and even with City Council, on the grassroots organization and how things really go. We've all sat in meetings before and we've read emails where you kind of cringe, and some of them you go, that guy just ticked me off.
Right.
But I think that's some of it too, the way it's presented, the way, just the passion in those neighborhoods. I know a lot of the Hill Farm folks and the Shadow Crossing folks and some of those, and it was discussed and passed around pretty heavily.
I think my running total, or my running tally that I personally received, and a lot of them were sent to all of us here and to the City Council and stuff and that too, but I think I was up around 35 or so people that took the time and the effort and I personally responded to everybody that sent me an email too.
Thank you.
That you know, thank you, and you know, like I said, I mean that really does help me gain a better understanding of, you know, a galvanized mindset, and that was the term that I used with the Planning Commission and the city staff. And that I've personally been on the Planning Commission for about 4 years. And I got to say that I've never seen a more galvanized, positive response from the public concerning an issue, ever. It was pretty incredible. And as Commissioner Bullock stated, I mean, very well written, very concise, very polite, which is nice every once in a while, especially for us up here, you know, to read and go through. So I certainly applaud the efforts that everybody in your neighborhood did. My questions with the petition were, like I said, you know, what parameters did you have to ensure the integrity of that, you know? Yeah. And I hope you understand why I asked that question, you know. So
I'd hope there'd be.
No, there's
dishonest
no right answer.
and like have their kids sign it or something.
It's not like you failed. I mean, you know, it's not, no, there's nothing like that. But so I guess, and like I said, it would just kind of help me get a better understanding and a better mindset of, you know, it's a pretty weighty issue. I mean, obviously, there's 100 people here tonight. So, but thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, and to that point, what I wanted to say is the rest of you think about coming up. We did read all of the emails that we got, so you have been heard, or you've at least been read. But if there's something else that you would like to say, because we've read them all, so please feel that you can come up and state your opinion.
She's come up. One thing that I thought was interesting with that petition that I didn't realize till I got partway through it was there was you could view comments. If somebody made comments, you click on them. That's the first time seeing one of those petitions, and I thought that was interesting that they could do that.
My name is Elizabeth Wilson. I have the property immediately adjacent to this rezoning. And I won't reiterate what everybody else has said, but I am extremely passionate about not wanting a zoning change. I've had this property 26 years, I believe. And yes, we're being encroached on by the houses. We have no issue with that. The developers are waiting for me to die. I'm getting a little age on me, but I'm not ready to die yet, and I just as soon not have any storage units next door to me. Kaysville's an upscale city. We love it here. Let's keep it that way. Let's not make it light industrial coming into our city. Let's not look like South Ogden. Again, we love it here. Let's keep it this way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Warnick. I live down in West Kaysville on 124 Bonneville Circle. I'm also going to be a future resident of Hill Farms. That my wife and I are building a home. We are adamantly opposed to this. I think one of the issues, I'm very friendly when it comes to development, but you have to make good planning decisions. This does not make any sense to put a light industrial zone in the middle of a low-density residential area. The other issue I think that you must look at is with the general plan for the city of Kaysville. The Utah State Code is specifically says that with this, after a legislative body has adopted a general plan, no street, park, or other public way, ground place, or space, no publicly owned building or structure, no public utility, whether publicly or privately owned, may be constructed or authorized unless it conforms to the current general plan. A few more sections there I could go through, but the idea is this is not conformance to the Kaysville general plan. Light industrial, just does not make sense. I would prefer to see a little bit more higher density residential there, but quite frankly, the office space that's going to go up along the front there, office right now is struggling. Those pads could sit empty for quite some time. The developer could come back after they get the zoning 3 or 4 years and say, you know what, we tried, we want the rest of it to go storage. It happens. It will always happen. So again, I know this went very viral. I saw the Facebook pages go. I've never seen something light up like this before. This was pretty amazing to see the community kind of come together. So anyways, thank you for your time, and thank you for sitting through all this.
Thank you.
Hello, Nate Denny. I live on Buffalo Trail Drive right there, fairly close to the property, just west of the new phase that Destination Homes is starting, adjacent to the parcel that's trying to be rezoned. I helped Patricia put together the petition, and I understand the questions with respect to the credibility of the petition. I would note, though, that if you actually go to the petition and you look at the locations of the individuals that signed, the vast majority are from the city of Kaysville and from the surrounding area. And I think one of the reasons why is this could potentially set precedent for all of Kaysville if we were to undertake this type of spot zoning, is really what I see it amounting to. I think when I look at the zoning map of Kaysville as it currently stands, I think we've already addressed the need for light industrial on the western portion of Kaysville. As I understand it, there's already parcels further west. In fact, you can see the corner, the very corner of, you go down 200 north, that are marked light industrial. And so now to shy away from that and try to do something different than what was originally set out, when it's not consistent with the general plan, to me doesn't make sense. And I'd like to echo everything that's already been said, and I'll sit down at this time.
Thank you.
Unless there's any questions.
How's it going? My name's Michael Allred. My wife and I have 4 kids. We just moved here 6 weeks ago. We looked at about 24 houses in Bountiful, Centerville, Farmington, Fruit Heights, and we chose this area because we left Utah County to escape an influx of industrial and commercial development. We've seen the negative effects of the light pollution, the traffic, not just car traffic, but semi-traffic and stuff like that. There's nothing that quite helps property values, surrounding property values, like a big wall with barbed wire on the fence. Not to mention 24-hour surveillance with bright LED lights that pollute the surrounding neighborhoods. So we came here to escape that because we've seen the detrimental effects. We spent the last 12 years in Utah County, and a lot of families are leaving because they're being pushed out by things like this. And in fact, our old school, our elementary school that our kids are going to, or used to go to, Alpine School District is talking about closing because so many families have left and enrollments are going down. And so I just wanted to state my opposition to this change.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Pruce. I live actually east of this, and I just wanted to make a comment from a slightly different perspective. But we've lived here in Kaysville for compared to a lot of the people who speak, a long time. We've lived here 23 years, not a long time for some of you. But anyway, we came we came out west because we liked at the time. There was kind of a master plan that everything was going to be zoned in either agriculture or residential with half-acre lots. And that appealed to us, and so that's why we came. So I guess the statement that I'd like to make is when the city changes what was, for us, the reason we came, that seems to not be fair. So I guess I'd like, while most of these people want consideration because of what's now and because they just came, I would request some consideration for those of us who came a long time ago because of what it was and what it was going to be, that now if you change, we can't do anything about that, but it seems a little bit unfair to us who came under one set of rules and then to change the rules later on. So from the old timers.
Thank you.
My name is Nathan Alvey. I live on the corner of Grassy Plain Drive. I represent 72 homeowners in the Schick Farms HOA that live to the west of the proposed change. Our community is about 10 years old, and we have participated in similar meetings when the Hill Farms development was proposed. We're glad to see the Hill Farms community here tonight. The portion directly to the west of this development once upon a time was also zoned general commercial and is now residential. I use that as an example of where this community is trending, and the proposal tonight is 180 degrees opposite of where this community is trending. Second thing I'd like to discuss is on a personal note, Grassy Plain Drive is the only street that is currently stubbed that would tie into this commercial property outside of 200 North. And I don't know if Andy could address the need for that being stubbed, but I believe it's because of fire purposes, emergency purposes. At the end of the day, it's going to be an additional access point coming down a quiet little residential street, which I have some very personal high concerns about. And I would hope that, my 4 little kids out riding their bikes would be taken into consideration of larger vehicles, trucks, trailers, if they had to navigate around 200 North going up and down my tiny little street for an access point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Holly Peterson, Jason's wife. I'm not a doctor either. But we live directly adjacent to this area. And coming from California, we're used to big buildings, light industrial, all of that. But in our search for a home, we would never, ever move in an area that had light industrial. We found this home in Kaysville about 2, maybe 3 years ago. And it was charming. Like, we live in the Perry homes, very nice homes. Horses in our backyard. We just loved everything about it. And the small town feel, the charming neighborhood, the nice homes, the safety, that's why we moved to this neighborhood. And a light industrial area does bring, as was already mentioned, I mean, it could be criminal, it could be, with 24-hour surveillance, we have 24-hour lighting, which is directly in the back of our home. And I know the dental office, they turn their lights off, I think, around 9 or 10, but they're bright, and, they're fine. I mean, it doesn't bother us that much because we go to bed. But 24-hour surveillance and 24-hour lighting, and it's not appealing, and it's not safe, and we're just starting to build our family, and we like the charmingness of our neighborhood, so we definitely strongly oppose this light industrial area. Thanks.
My name is Levere Gardner. I too live in the vicinity just to the west of this area. I have maybe a little different perspective. I retired 100 years ago, more or less. And for 21 years since that time, I've been doing residential real estate. I've done a lot of it. And I've gone in and out of a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of residential areas. And I picked this one to move into. And then I suddenly find this kind of change pushed upon us. So we have a lot of things, I think, to consider. Number one, that's been mentioned, it will affect property home values. No question about it. People will have a much less interest in coming out to any of these residential neighborhoods to buy a home, which dramatically affects your own home value. Another thing is that it was also mentioned about the extension of legacy coming in. This is what we're going to meet with the public to continue our image of Kaysville. They're going to come across past a brand new elementary school. and move right into a beautiful, lovely, light industrial area. This can't be. This is not what we want. This is not what we ought to have. I don't want to mention any controversy, but there was a little bit of conversation about integrity of information going out on the internet, etc. I wasn't a part of any of that, but I have another little comment. It seems like the integrity of communication to the neighborhoods would be enhanced if we knew about these things much earlier. Sometimes it's the day before, sometimes it's just barely before. You folks have it on your agenda for a long time. Those requesting changes have it on their agenda for a long time. It rarely gets on our agenda until the very last minute. It would really help if we could do something about that also. So as you can guess, I'm very definitely opposed to this kind of change to our Kaysville. I've lived in Kaysville for over 41 years. This is a wonderful area, but we've got to protect it all the time. We've got to keep things that move in the right direction coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Seth Ferber. I don't live terribly close to this property, and in that case, I don't have a whole lot of say in whether I'm for or against this, but more or less just a general comment on to me, this is more of a general planning and zoning issue. I think the city really, especially now with the West Davis corridor coming in, now would be a pretty good time for the city to really look at take another look at land use planning and determine what we want where. If we want industrial, if we want an industrial zone down on the west side or closer to West Davis corridor, is this the right place for it? Is there another piece that would be more appropriate that's closer to the corridor? When I lived in another city, my wife and I, when we were first married, we moved away from Kaysville, and now we've since moved back. But when I was in that other city, they went through a period where they developed a master planning zone, kind of like a general plan, only it had an actual map that master planned every piece of property and what and it wasn't just the city determined they wanted. They hired experts in land use planning, and they said, okay, these pieces of property would be probably best as commercial, industrial, residential, multifamily, all that, multifamily, high-density residential. And that gave them sort of an outline of what properties should be zoned what. And it helped with a lot of this kind of conflict that comes up where the city says, a developer, an owner of the property comes in and says, I want to do this. If it's contrary to that master plan, it doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's going to be a big challenge, a bigger challenge. And in this case, if the city had something like that in place, it would somewhat resolve these kind of things, because I've done some, I've actually owned storage units and whatnot, and you go out and you look at properties that you might think would work for a storage unit, and you also look at properties that you would love to have storage units on it, and you know that it's probably not going to happen. The city needs to determine, do they want industrial in this area, because as we all know, one type of zoning begets that same type of zoning. If you keep this as general commercial, there's a bigger chance that the piece across the street to the east may end up being a commercial piece, because there's just going to be more draw to a commercial center. Same thing, if this becomes an industrial zone, then the couple of general commercial pieces to the south, I believe one of the ladies who owns that came up, may end up, it'll be harder for you to make a justification of why that can't be industrial also. So, again, I'm not necessarily opposed to this. I just think the city needs to nail down, do they want industrial in this area, general commercial, or what, and go that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last call. All right, we're going to close the public hearing, and we'll open up the discussion to us. So, have a lot of questions. Do you want to come back up and we can ask? Yes. I, too, was a little disappointed that we just got this tonight. But the only thing is I had heard through their correspondence that storage sheds might be proposed. So I did do a little bit of homework on that. I did a quick Google on when you talk about West Kaysville. I thought, well, what do other cities around us do? So I took the size, population, all of that into account. Just on a quick, Syracuse, which has a little bit less than what we do, a little less in size. They have one that I could find. Layton has 2, Farmington 2, Kaysville currently has 3, Clearfield has 4, and Roy has 5. In my opinion, that kind of speaks to what cities want with storage sheds. So that's my opinion on that. I don't know if you have any statistics on that, what a ratio would be.
We haven't looked at specific statistics. What we have been able to identify is that the current vacancies in this area are at a high rate. Most of the storage units are older storage facilities. And I think one of the things that, like Go Petition, that's a new one on me. That was very interesting. I applaud your citizens for utilizing such a software. I think the technologies for storage units, per se, have completely changed. When we talk about security and those types of elements, the technology that's out there to be able to control each of the units and identify when those units are being opened at any time at the on-site office is completely a game changer as far as security. Lighting and intensity is also the same. And I think one of the things that maybe is failed to understand is it is general commercial currently. There are impacts on all neighbors under the current zone being general commercial. We believe with proper design that those impacts can be minimized and with this type of a use. And because we're able to basically screen off the facility and bring the lighting down and provide the proper security, that the impacts are minimal. Any type of general commercial, shopping centers or otherwise, you have those elements. I mean, that exists under the current zone. And so I think there's some challenges before you in trying to identify how best to deal with this. A couple other things that I would mention. One, I think Terra Ventures would be open to amend the rezone so that it wasn't include the general commercial wouldn't be removed from 200 North Street, so that it would be the back portion of the property. I think that when you're looking at impacts upon neighbors, the materials that would be used for this type of facility and building these facilities would be similar and consistent with the general commercial development. And we see opportunities to minimize any impacts on neighbors. I think I must say that it was a great public hearing. There wasn't a lot of name calling, which I'm used to. And your citizens, we'd like to work with them and try to identify how we can minimize any kind of potential impact. Again, the developer is interested in continuing their current plan for offices, so they believe in the product. They believe that we can have negligible impact on their own development on 200 North. That speaks pretty much volumes. We'd be cannibalizing our own property if we were to do it poorly. Dave Adams is also here with me with Terra Venture Properties, and He's available. He may want to make a couple comments, but we really want to answer your questions. We're open and inviting to meet with the neighbors. They seem to be civil. They probably wouldn't take us behind the woodshed too late at night.
They do. There's a few doctors that can patch
those
up.
two we were worried about, but the rest of them were very civil.
A couple attorneys too.
Dave, did you have any comments? Okay.
Actually, I've got a couple of questions for you first. So, obviously, the main sticking point to this entire argument here this evening is, or discussion this evening, is the incorporation of these storage units. That's probably right? I mean,
yes, sir.
Look at, yeah. You've cited on multiple occasions that having on-site manager and on-site lighting is going to, and I know you didn't say this and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're alluding to the fact that that's going to erase the criminal element, the potential criminal element. I think that's pretty naive to think that that's, by having somebody living on site is going to get rid of that altogether. I think that's short-sighted. I think that inviting this kind of business in close proximity to a very, I mean, for lack of a better word, a very upscale housing development. I mean, I live in East Kaysville. I live up north or east of the cemetery, so I'm about as far away as Kaysville goes. But I think inviting something like this invites a lot of issues and a lot of problems that were outlined by the vast majority of the folks. 22 folks, all who spoke, were against it. All 22 people. Again, that galvanizing support that we read and that we've heard and we've seen. I mean, I do understand where they're coming from here. You know, property values, safety, you know, things along those lines. And I can't get out of my mind the criminal element of these places. I mean, obviously it's not seedy and we're not on the south side of Chicago or anything like that, and I understand that. But still, I think that the propensity for that to happen is high. And I really think it's on-site manager be damned, too. I really don't think that that's going to completely erase that element from this. So that's where I stand on it.
A couple of things I can mention. One of the things I thought about, I think there's opportunities if there was concern of developing something that was more light industrial onto this property beyond what the concept you see tonight. I think there's an opportunity to work with the city under a development agreement format that would allow us to define our current project. However, the technology, going back to your security question, I mean, we don't anticipate barbed wire fences. The facility can be enclosed with the building walls on the outside and with security cameras and technology to be able to observe what's going on in the facility at all times, and really eliminates the criminal elements.
Well, but to play devil's advocate to that, though, I mean, technology can be circumvented. Any of us here know that, right? Do you plan on running a background check on everybody that rents a unit from you? How do you know that you're not renting to criminals? How do you know that that's not part of the whole picture? You know, I mean, granted, I'm going off on a little limb here. Sure. I realize that, but my job as a planning commissioner is to look at things objectively. So, you know, I mean, where are we at with that then?
We can appreciate that. I think one of the things that needs to be identified, I think if you really look at this location and where it's going to be located, it's really going to service the citizens of this part of the valley. You can see tonight, you have really good citizens. I mean, you have a lot of doctors, obviously. You have a lot of high incomes. you have a lot of those people that have RVs and trailers and facilities that this would service, and so it is a service that's needed in the community. We've been able to identify that. We believe in it. We may disagree on certain elements, and we can appreciate that. We believe that there are opportunities to design around all of the impacts that have been discussed tonight.
I'd like to make a few comments as well. First, Terra Venture Developments they've been a great asset to our community. They've done a lot of good for our community. I want to acknowledge that and recognize that. And the principals and owners of Terra Venture are great guys, and I've appreciated both the personal and professional relationship I've had with them. And then what the community has done is extremely impressive, too, to see this united front coming out and to present it in the manner they did, to me was very impressive. I haven't seen that before. And but given that, I think that there are several flaws with this. A storage unit is still a storage unit. And you talk about building walls, you're going to have walls. In people's backyards, you talk about pushing those to the back, well, those backs borders properties, homeowners. I was, several years ago, part of the original, probably 7 years ago, we started to rewrite the general plan. Then it got suspended for a while. Then I think most of us were part of that a few years back. In going, in re-looking at it, we looked at what the future was going to bring. We looked at our zoning. We looked at the how it all fits in, and we looked at all the segments of the market: residential, commercial, industrial. We went through it, and we're looking at what we think is going to come in the future, and anticipating this highway coming in, the corridor coming in. And me personally, I don't think that it meets the goals and objectives of the general plan or the intent of the zoning ordinances. I just want to mention a few things right out that we went through with our general plan. Some of the goals that the city has in the general plan is to preserve and identify the character of Kaysville City, primarily the residential community. That's right at the very front of that. I just want to read a couple of them. And then as far as commercial development, it says that the commercial development should support the residential base, should be a support to it. We're interested in tax base and tax revenue, obviously, and commercial development is important to that. As Dave knows, I'm in commercial development myself, commercial development management, so I understand the need for development. I understand the tax revenue and the tax base that it can do, but they have to be well-planned developments to enhance and contribute to the community. And I don't think that this particular development in changing from general commercial to light industrial does that. I think it deters. I don't think it conforms to the neighborhoods. I don't think it conforms to the general plan or the intent of the zoning in this area. It goes on with the business industrial goals. Again, it says locations that support the residential but mitigates the impact on them. And I don't think this mitigates it. I think this enhances some of those challenges that we've heard tonight. And full disclosure here too is everybody says, I don't want this in my backyard. Well, it's not my backyard, it's actually my front yard as well. I live in the neighborhood that's why I've seen the petition, I've heard the buzz. The validity of the petition, I can vouch for the validity of it. I abstained from signing it, but I read it, I saw it passed around, I've heard the buzz. Even if I didn't live here, I don't think this is the right intent, the right purpose, and the right use. I think that there's better uses for this. The light industrial is not an appropriate use of land for this piece of property, in my opinion. And again, I've got the utmost respect for your company and for the principals, and appreciate what they have done for our community. And I want to be on record with that. because they're just outstanding people. Their developments are good, but I think we're missing the boat on this one. And I can't support this. It is not what we want in this area. You look at the growth, you look at Hill Farm. That community went through a lot to get. There are people that are here tonight that were here when we were doing the Hill Farms approval that opposed that. But you've seen what that has become. It's become a beautiful community. It's a different type of community for Kaysville with the different homes and the way that it creates a community feel. And then the surrounding neighborhoods in it. This area is becoming a very desirable residential area. And it does allow for some support from a commercial base. And with me personally, I can't support this.
There have been nice contributions from the citizens, especially, but also commissioners. Good thinking, good research. Betty. My thoughts are very similar to everything that's been expressed tonight. And I, too, feel like this is a very important place for Kaysville because this is where we're still growing. So we need to be very thoughtful about that. And just knowing that 200, which is already quite an artery through the city, when there's the West Davis corridor in several years, it's going to be very visible when people enter Kaysville from that western edge and go along and see the beautiful neighborhoods and then go further into the city. This is some very prime land. And I, too, am very interested in the right kind of general commercial that could go there, not only for services, but for commodities that could maybe be a little closer to the developments that are right there and contribute to the tax base. That interests me a lot. So even though I also feel like the developers are striving to be thoughtful and listen, I just think that the light industrial would be less desirable.
I just have a few questions for Terra Venture. And I suppose two of them relate to this first one. So what was the reason why the plat why there wasn't a subdivision, proposed, like a preliminary plat submitted with the rezone application?
I'm not sure that there was a specific reason that it wasn't. The request was made over the long history of Kaysville. They've taken great and inordinate efforts to create an industrial park, and they've done a tremendous job in doing so. Our objective is not to violate the integrity of the industrial complex, even though it may be inferred. Under no conditions do we have any interest in bringing discredit to the industrial zone. We were suggestions, good suggestions, and positive comment, along with requests for the opportunity for this type of a service within the city was made. We took that as a strong suggestion and received it well. We make no apologies to the community for the receipt of those strong suggestions, but we clearly suggest to the public, under no conditions do we have any interest in anything that suggests that we need the type of security that would compromise Kaysville City. That is not in our minds by any suggestion suggesting that we're providing good strength to it. Even the highest, most valuable homes within this community have problems. And with that, there is reality. But on the other side, we would clearly suggest that that industrial zone may be broader than what we had perceived. The suggestions we received were specifically to the opportunity to store personal belongings in an area where it may be highly beneficial. Many, many neighbors have suggested they would like it. Over many years of development within the city, we have observed a parcel of land south of, in the southerly portion of the community, fill enormous needs for homeowners throughout the community. I do not believe that they have any security problem that I'm aware of at all over the past 20 plus years of observing it. On the other hand, if the people do not want the service, we want to listen and work with them and work in any way possible, as has been mentioned, to take very valuable property and try and use it to its highest and best value towards the good of the community and within the city. And as such, if the community is concerned, as they obviously are, we just simply make a request to the commission at this time is to table the process. We're happy to meet with the neighbors, listen to what they'd like us to work on, and work through a process that may be beneficial. We have been in great hopes, so we've brought good services to their community. I hope that the medical facilities that are there now are well received. We don't have any interest in compromising that. So if there's an inference of that, I refute it. It's the highest quality medical product that we could bring to Kaysville City. And we intend to continue in that, and even if it is in providing space for people to store belongings that would be high quality. We do the best that's reasonable within the industry. But we would, with the interest of the community at this time, love to meet with them, take time, and continue in the planning process and invite the council to possibly table this and let us meet with them and look through that process. I've traveled throughout the state and in a number of areas, and I believe that it would be possible to work plans if it were to even change from the working with areas where people could store belongings, but also have fairly high quasi-commercial industrial opportunities to join in small packages may be of benefit. We'd love to work with the city and certainly with the neighbors on this process.
So I'll get back to my question, but
certainly.
Personally, this is going to be, I don't know, controversial or whatever. I'm not so much concerned about the possible crime, the potential for crime. This is Kaysville. If the other storage areas or industrial areas had such a bad rap for crime, I would like to think that the city would say, hey guys, FYI, our other light industrial zones have a problem with crime. So, and any suggestion about crime is anecdotal. So unless we have evidence, real evidence of the other light industrial zones in Kaysville that have crime problems, crime is not a convincing factor to me. You mentioned that you had received a suggestion, a strong suggestion saying that this was going to be a marketable thing. Was that something from within the city or within the market?
Both.
So you've received suggestions from within someone in the city staff, or are we talking elected officials about storage here? Where did that come from?
I would simply say that it has been a suggestion.
From the staff or somewhere else?
I would say it's been a suggestion.
Okay. So back to my original question. Why was there not a plat, preliminary subdivision plat submitted with the rezone?
Like I say, there was no reason there wasn't a plat. I don't know that that's a requirement.
Oh, and there's not a requirement. I agree with that. It's not a requirement. But a lot of times we will see that. And the way that I think our planning commission and the city council is made up, and I've voiced this in the past, that I don't necessarily agree with this. I like to look at the zoning question separate from a plat, but oftentimes we've meshed the two, and so I just wondered if there was any rationale. It sounds like there really wasn't, and that's fine. So do you have any buyers that are interested and to the point where maybe they're under contract, or do you have any LOIs on any of the storage sheds and any of these office buildings? And then a second part of that question is, if you don't have any interest from that, are you planning on operating the storage sheds TerraVenture themselves, if they came in?
I would say to you that with the input that the community has given here, we're going to think hard about storage units and give that more thought, because the thoughts that we have been given have been as compelling to us as this evening has been. We have been contacted by substantial developers who would like to come and put that type of a facility here in the community, not necessarily in this site, but in others as well. We've declined the opportunity to offer that property to them. We've looked on our own accord. We've invited our engineers. They're quite qualified. They have designed a number of projects. They're familiar with many. They're familiar with them throughout the country as well as within the state. And as Brett has indicated to you, these facilities have taken on a much higher level. You might find a good example in St. George, where there are 3-story product down there throughout the country. You wouldn't recognize them. They look like commercial buildings. We aren't proposing that. We're proposing something more traditional, but also in a very reasonably good quality level. But like I say, we take no offense. We look to work with the community and with the city and would like to continue that with that opportunity. We'd like to pursue the zone and continue with an open accord there, but we aren't in a rush. Like I say, we didn't even bring a plat. We came to make a request to converse, and we appreciate what the neighbors have said.
So are you suggesting to table this item then?
I'm sorry, I don't hear.
Are you suggesting to table this item then?
I think, yes, I didn't suggest, I requested it. Hearing the neighbors, I think it would be a prudent thing to table it. We'd be happy to talk with them, to hear on a more personal level. We're surprised to see that it didn't come with at least a mixed review. And in as much as it hasn't, we'd like to still consider and talk with them, to share with them a few thoughts that we've seen and some of the requests that we've had without offense.
So,
yeah, sorry.
So the reason why I asked, and I can only presume that you didn't directly answer means the answer to these questions is no, which is, did you have any buyers under contract, and is there any letters of intent that have been signed? And so the reason I asked that is because if there is not any skin in the game from anybody else besides TerraVenture, then this holds a whole lot less weight. And so if you said to me, we have a third party who has signed an LOI for the storage units or for all of these office buildings, or whatever the proposal was. I know this is very preliminary. Then it would be like, okay, well, maybe this is something close to what might happen. But without that, we grant we recommend a light industrial rezone, and then this property becomes a blank slate without anybody else having skin in the game. And that's one concern I have. So a couple questions I have just for the staff is. I
wonder if I could just answer that.
Sure, go ahead.
As I mentioned to you, we have declined the receipt of those LOIs. They have been substantial, and we have our own skin in the game. So in response to you, there is no question. We are sincere and serious, but we're also receptive to working.
Sure.
To suggest that it has no meaning, we didn't come to meet with you for no meaning.
And I appreciate that, and I think I can respect that. I think it seems that I think you would also have to concede that there is a concern that you have refused LOIs and money talks, and just hypothetically speaking, and this maybe isn't practical.
I assure you, we didn't come to the community to put pressure upon you to make this decision.
And I don't feel like you are.
Good.
I don't feel like you are. I'm just saying, if we rezone it without much tied to it, then a light industrial type user that's even more intense than a storage unit could come in tomorrow, this is all hypothetical, and wipe this slate clean. That's my concern. But I understand where you're coming from.
I think you're absolutely correct without question, but I think it's also equally the same with the commercial zone that exists on it.
Yeah, but it has a little less potential for incompatible uses, and we've already, that question has been answered a long time ago because it's currently GC. So just I had some questions for staff. I think I know the answer to this, but I looked on the major street plan. Correct me if I'm wrong. Currently, Schick Lane, or I suppose it's still 200 North, but Schick, I guess, used to be here. From here, Andy or Lyle, from here on down, is that a major street in the major street plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I suppose if it wasn't now, it probably will be when West Davis Corridor comes in, which is my next question. The most recent alignment or whatever, what is proposed, if anything, on West Davis Corridor right there?
At this point, the light industrial zone that you see in the corner is owned by UDOT, and that is included in the alignment for the corridor.
So that will be like an on-ramp, off-ramp?
It will be an interchange at that location. That's what they've proposed.
Okay. And then just a really side note, out of curiosity, too, actually, what noticing was given on this? Was it the 500-foot buffer?
500-foot standard notice for a rezone, yes.
Okay. And then this might test your knowledge, and I trust me, I will get to other things, and if people want to jump in, I'm not trying to dominate the floor. But when was this all rezoned GC approximately? Because at some point it was, I'm sure, something agriculture.
I'm sure it was agricultural at one point. It's been probably 10 to 15 years that it's been zoned general commercial, based on my off-the-cuff recollection.
Okay, and now this is going to be anecdotal, but I think it's a safe assumption. I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of concerns, probably many of the same concerns from the citizens when this was rezoned general commercial. They probably talked about safety, character of the neighborhood, traffic, on down the list. But nevertheless, it is what it is now. And I think, in my mind, when we're looking at a rezone from, in this particular instance, from a general commercial to a light industrial, there are, especially in this area, there are factors that I think weigh in favor of not rezoning it. One of them is, it's been said in other ways, this is a very high potential area for a neighborhood commercial zone that, in terms of good planning, can alleviate the traffic burden elsewhere in Kaysville. So if this parcel were more fully developed as commercial and not, say, storage units, I think storage units, if we had a traffic engineer here, storage units create less trips than a typical commercial use. But, so if you look at a short-term view of traffic, storage units create less traffic burden locally. But what it does, in my mind, is it pushes traffic elsewhere, namely back up here to the east, up to Smith's, up over I-15, and it eliminates the ability to create a neighborhood commercial zone where all of these residents don't have to drive a mile or two east. It keeps that opportunity locally, which alleviates traffic problems, which we know are just only increasing around I-15, 200 North on the east side. So that's one thing in terms of a good planning principle, I think, that we need to consider, is this, keeping this as a very potential good neighborhood core of commercial can have benefits elsewhere in Kaysville, especially when West Davis corridor comes in and it becomes even more heavily used. So there was another, I mean, it was mentioned, there was another light industrial rezone that we recently had. I think this one is different than that. We granted a rezone. We at least recommended a rezone in that case. This one, in my mind, is different. In that case, the property was immediately adjacent to two major roads. It touched at least one other parcel, and I think more, that were already zoned light industrial. This does not touch any. It's not even within the vicinity. This is a very big, contiguous large parcel. That was a very small, odd-shaped, not very marketable parcel. And I'm just trying to distinguish these to show you where I stand. That one didn't really have any ability to alleviate traffic elsewhere in Kaysville, whereas I think this one, keeping this one general commercial does. This property is not terribly close to I-15. It's certainly not within a few hundred yards like the other one was. This one's not close to multi-use rail lines. This one's not close to high-power transmission lines, although I think there are some out here. I'm not exactly sure where they are. Not as close as the other one. So in other words, it's not close to anything that is even quasi-industrial. Not even close to it. The other one was in the middle of it, in my opinion. And so this one also doesn't have much opportunity naturally within the property. It does, but doesn't have natural buffers that were around it like the other one did. And so just using those two contrasting examples shows why I think this one is different, and this one is not nearly as conducive to light industrial as other parcels are, in my opinion. And so I would say we should recommend. I don't think we need to table it. I think we should recommend denial. And then ultimately, I guess the last thing I'll say for the citizens is we only recommend. The final deciding body, if we passed on a recommendation, if we tabled it, that's a different question. If we passed on a recommendation, the final deciding body is not us. It's the city council. So this is the beginning of the process.
I think
where I'm at.
You hit something on there. There is a difference between a table and a recommend denial that comes into play. And I think you touched on some good points. You know, I'm trying to look at this from a very objective standpoint as to what the general plan and what the zoning is intended to be used for, and in trying to remove some of the personal feelings. And just looking, like I said, if I didn't live in this area, I'd still be opposing this, Dave. And I do want to acknowledge again the things that you have done. You made some comments that, you know, your intent is to enhance the community. I believe that. You know, maybe you go back and look at different, you know, commercial type uses that would be beneficial to the neighborhood. Everybody that's moved in this area, that has been zoned commercial, you know, in the last 10 or 15 years. So I think that they know that. But if there were some relook at this, you know, something that services and benefits the community better, I think it would be received more receptively.
Speaking candidly with that, I'd almost have to defer to your experience. We have attempted on many occasions to continue to market this in what has been alluded to as a neighborhood center. I do not believe that's a feasible product right now by definition, but I'm looking for your advice on that. Not that I'm putting you on the spot, but
it's interesting you bring that up, because when we looked at this thing 6-7 years ago, Stuart was actually on the committee, the General Plan Rewrite Committee, and we discussed that very particular item, and there's not enough housetops yet out there to really support that type of stuff. That's why, you know, the Smith's Marketplace kind of evolved to, and which I know there's a lot of opposition to that as well, but I think that's been a great enhancement and value to our community. It's alleviated a lot of the traffic concerns. It's provided a west side service, which we were the only corridor that had that east-west corridor that didn't have a west side service going all the way up I-15 through Davis and Weber County. But you know, maybe it's you've got office in there. You could develop office in there. office, the office that we've had in there, I think is, other than the bright lights, has been received very well and is very tasteful and professional, and I think that enhances the neighborhood in providing that type of service to this side of Kaysville. General office typically doesn't provide a lot of service unless it is medical type. The tax revenue base isn't quite as great as some of the retail. So it's a tough one. You're in a tough spot here because it's a little premature, I think, until it's further developed, and when that corridor gets in, which is still down the road quite a bit. And again, we talked about that 7 years ago, is when that corridor comes in, it becomes a lot more viable for those type of services to service the community. But I just don't think that with where this neighborhood is growing and the character and identity that's taken on, that this is the appropriate use for it.
I mean, on that note, the earlier rezone that we recommended denial on Main Street over by Mutton Hollow, at least one of my thoughts was, as that huge parcel, next to I-15 develops, then it makes those parcels along Main Street much more marketable, and they will probably be sold and developed at a quicker pace than they are currently. I think it's the same principle here. That I don't doubt, in fact, I would trust the experts that you guys have said that there's not a whole lot viable right now. Maybe because access in terms of off of West Davis Corridor hasn't come in yet. The number of rooftops is probably the main reason. But that's going to happen, I think. And I would guess that, I admit this is a total guess, I would guess that once this portion of Kaysville, this area of Kaysville fills in, that at some point there will be enough rooftops to support a development that a neighborhood commercial type center here, a neighborhood center that would be more marketable commercially. And so that just gets to the long-term planning question that we need to think about, and I think the long-term planning question falls in favor of keeping it general commercial, in my opinion.
Well, that filling in is going on as we speak right now.
Right.
Today, right now, it's happening. So I think it's just a matter of time. Obviously, the West Davis corridor is happening too. That's no longer a foregone conclusion or something that's often some idyllic future land where, it may happen. It is. So it is just a matter of time before this fills in, and we can use this in a much more viable way than the way that I see it being proposed before us this evening.
I appreciate your time. I won't burden you. I would make a sincere plea that you consider tabling this at this time. We came in good faith, thinking that we would receive an opportunity to carry on in this process. We would hope that would be granted, that you might consider tabling it. Let us talk with the community, see what their thoughts are. We'd be happy to meet with city staff and to pursue this, even if at the end, as you've made a request or a suggestion, you'd like to see a hard plan. We could consider that. This is obviously just a sketch to come and converse with you. We'd appreciate that opportunity to have an open door with this request and meet some of the things that you suggested would be required. We would certainly appreciate that in your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. It would be my suggestion that we not table it. I don't know. I appreciate all the comments and everything, but I don't know that totally swayed my decision on what I would vote on. I would like to not grant it.
The thought that I had about the one thing that I think could be positive with tabling is the opportunity for, I don't think we have enough opportunities in advance when it's wide open for citizens to be able to engage and speak with a developer about, what they would really like and to hear the developer's perspective to them in the position in the meeting.
There's no way in hell that that the developer is going to be able to sway this community, though, in any way.
Well, yeah, not about light industrial, but it may be very valuable for him to hear what they would love to have happen in a GC.
Yeah, I think that could happen without a table, though.
Yeah, that could happen without a table.
They wanted
because
the
then
input.
it stays GC, so.
Well, then, again, the developer would need to be open or offer that opportunity for the residents.
Which they wouldn't, because in a general, when you bring a plan, when you bring a proposal for a permitted use under an existing zone, the citizens have no say in what goes there. The developer can, out of the kindness of their heart, go and talk to the citizens, but if it is a permitted use, they submit a plan to the city, and the city says approved. So
I'm hoping for the kindness of the heart, the interest to see what kinds of things, Anyway, that's about the only way I can see a tabling being productive is to not necessarily have it be about this rezone, but to hear them about, what you have to consider and what they would really love to have in that parcel.
I appreciate that courtesy, and I believe at this juncture, not by any means by way of capitulation at all. We've listened, and it appears that you have a mindset and that we've come in good faith. You'd like to deny it, which I believe is the case. We hereby formally withdraw the application. If we'd like to pursue it, we'll come back later. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. All right. Any comment? Okay. We'll move on then.
It's within their rights to withdraw their application.
I'm sorry?
Certainly within their rights to withdraw their application.
Sure.
Okay.
And for the interest of those who are here from the neighborhoods, as mentioned, if they do come back, there would be noticing again regarding any other proposals for that conversation.
It's a pretty timely withdrawal. Okay, next.
All right, we have a public hearing on an amendment to the Kaysville City Annexing Policy Plan.
You recall a couple weeks ago we reviewed this. As per state code that required us before to take comment from affected entities. We've completed that process. Had no additional comment after the meeting previously. Which allows us to take it forward to a public hearing. Again, the proposal is to amend Kaysville City's annexation policy plan, which is a state-required document where the city outlines which properties adjacent to their boundaries they would consider for annexation. This is our current plan. The areas in green are the areas that are currently included in our annexation policy plan that we have declared that we would consider for annexation. The area that is being petitioned for or under review tonight is this area in the northeast quarter of town, highlighted here in this red. You can see the color there. It does abut city boundary. It abuts other areas that have already been included in the policy plan. Including property in the policy plan does not commit us to annex it. It just gives us the right to consider it. If the inclusion of this property into the policy plan is denied, then we cannot consider an annexation petition for the property. So this property is being looked at. Obviously, the intent is for some kind of development in the future. In this case, it would be proposed residential development. This does not, as I said, bind us to annex it. It allows us to go through the criteria. In your packet was the current policy plan. It listed, I think, 6 or 7 areas of criteria that would be studied in depth should this area be included. So this is the public hearing, again, just for the policy plan, not for the annexation itself, and certainly not for the development.
Thank you for that explanation. Is there anyone that would like, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
My name is Matt Yates. I'm one of the developers for this parcel. I just wanted to make a few comments that we do notice there are some folks here that have concerns, and we just wanted to be it known. We have several times met with the folks that live on the county side, and we haven't had a lot of meetings with the Layton people. And so we have received input from them, because initially we thought we had to include them into the annexation plan, and several meetings later they had a lot of concerns. Didn't seem like they were all entirely opposed to doing it, but they had issues. And so having the annexation parcel be smaller was less of an impact, and but we it come up several times that they want to discuss, well, obviously, what do you want to build there? And so we did get into that a little bit with them, but the concerns we have for tonight is is that, you know, we would prefer to move that discussion to another meeting, and just try to see if this is something that we can get into the future annexation boundary, and if there's, you know, we've had several meetings. We've been working on this project for close to 2 years, and we've had a lot of meetings with, you know, all the different utility companies, water, power companies, and trying to get through those issues before we know if we have a project. And so I guess that would be the one request. I know they're going to have some questions on what are you going to build. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Lance Munson. I believe I'm in part of the area that's being proposed to be annexed. Is that accurate? Well, because you have the green here, that's Kaysville. That's already been annexed, right?
No, those are areas that the city's previously approved for potential consideration. So it's not yet been annexed, but is an area of possible consideration for an annexation petition.
Okay, so can you? I'm at 1298 North Highway 89, which is where we were initially brought into this to ask if we would be willing to annex, because according to what state code, my understanding is that it has to be continuous, and you can't be annexing and creating an island or a plateau. And from what I've seen from the area that wants to be annexed, that's what's being created, is both an island / plateau, and it's not continuous, according to that's just according to what I've seen. And so that's a question that I have: is that, am I accurate in my thought process?
Would you like me to answer that now or at the end of the public hearing?
Oh.
So I can answer it if you'd like.
Okay, go ahead and answer it.
I believe the area that Mr. Munson lives in is this green area here. There's a little private lane subdivision, 5 or 6 houses. That has been previously included in the annexation policy plan. That's why it's on the map in green. The dark red line is the current city boundary. As he mentioned, one of the concerns was, if we annex the hashed area here, do we have to annex this area to assure that it doesn't become an island of county surrounded all by one city? Mm-hmm. So we reviewed this with Davis County. They said they had no problem leaving that in the county with the connection on Highway 89. So it's not an island. So that's where maybe the confusion or the change occurred, that initially the petitioners were targeting that area to be included in their annexation petition. But if they can leave it out, that leaves these people in their current status and has no impact to them.
Has no impact. Okay.
So you're bridging over Highway 89 to get to this, is that?
That's essentially, yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? So the green areas
not in the city that are currently included in the policy plan.
Right, I get that. My question is it a matter of if or when those become annexed?
There's still if associated with that.
Okay.
Generically, several years ago, at least this is my interpretation, Salt Lake County was having turf wars over unincorporated areas. Cities were incorporating, they were doing various things, and quite a bit of dispute over certain areas, especially developed commercial areas. So the state legislature created this procedure to assure that everybody had a adequate say and proper procedure was followed. Much of that probably is unnecessary in this area, but nonetheless, so it's the law and it's required.
It's a small if. The way I read that, let's put it that way, it is a small if. Okay.
It's a small if, but this is a necessary part of it.
It would be logical to assume in Davis County that between the National Forest property to the east and the Great Salt Lake property to the west, anything that's developable one day will be incorporated.
So it's like a 4-point font if. Yeah. It's not even 12.
It's maybe that the wind's just a lot longer.
Yeah, right, okay.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps me kind of understand where this is coming from. It's just the majority of the homeowners that are in my area, the green area there, as well as the proposed potentially annexed in the future area, would like to hold off on annexation until we know more about the plans of the developer. They've been great to work with, and they've been very open to us talking with them. But there was talks of townhomes and condos and stuff like that, which we were opposed to. Also, I believe zone R18, which is 8,000 square foot lots, which majority of houses up in our area have at least a third to half acre type lots. So those are probably the two major concerns from many of the residents that I'm kind of here representing tonight. We just, at the end of the day, we're concerned about the size of a development. Highway 89 expansion probably will not happen before they start or complete this development or are doing this development. So that strain and the extra amount of traffic, et cetera, that's going to be placed on this little road right there is something that we're very concerned about with our children and the safety of our children. And obviously high-density homes, our housing, property values have to be considered, that they'll be, it's just not the area for high-density housing. So.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Giving your comments. Anybody else would like to come up?
Well, I'm not in your city. I'm in Layton, but we're right next to door to it. And this originally this was going to be developed as part of the Brumsville project, and it was going to have.
Do you mind stating your name?
Barry Maurer, and I live in Layton, right next to this development. And it was developed, part of it, and it went into Layton. And originally, all this was going to go into the same development and be like 30-acre lots. And so that's the same concern we all have. And the homeowner association was here, but he left because the meeting was so long, I guess. I was going to talk too, but I just want to express that I would think you'd want similar atmosphere. It's up by the mountains. It's beautiful property. And high-density housing just doesn't fit it. And so that's our concern. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Athena Frescus. I live in the Bromsfield neighborhood, and unlike a lot of people, I'm not on social media, so as soon as I found out about this, I was very upset that the annex may happen in townhomes and apartments may be behind my home. So I just plead that we hold this off until we know what the future development looks like. Learning from experience, we sold some property in Layton, and the developers said one thing to us and turned around and did another. So I'm going into this with a bad taste just from personal experience and family experience. So I would like to see if we could hold off and see if there's anything that we could do to get a more full understanding of what they would like to do. Thank you for your time.
So where do you live exactly on here?
I am right off of 25. I'm 3080 East, 25 South, right off of Bromsfield, third house on the south side of 25 East.
So up north here then.
Yeah.
So Layton also?
I'm Layton, yes.
Okay.
And then that was another question. Where I am in Layton, how much does my voice be heard if I don't reside in Kaysville? Do we have much say in is Lyle here?
You've already said it, so it's good.
We are listening to you.
So you were great. Thank you again for your input and advice on this. But so that is just a lot of the neighbors wondering if we do have a say in the Bromsfield and Tanglewood area of what we can do to ensure that no townhomes and condos are put up.
I think we would probably listen to you. The elected officials may not as much as we would, unfortunately. Okay. But maybe they will. I don't know. So I think, in my opinion, it would be worth it for you to at least come and still voice your concerns. The weight that those concerns will given, who knows what they'll do. We're just recommending, kind of like the earlier things.
Sure.
So,
is Layton City, do they want a part of that and have that be developed into Layton, or is it?
They did not.
No, they actually, in casual conversation, denied it. I mean, they didn't want it, right? That's why it came there.
Talked with Layton. They said they have no opposition to us adding this property to our annexation policy plan.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Oh, come ahead.
My name's Chris Trujillo. I'm also working on the development of this property, and we think it's a great area for homes to go into. We just want to clarify a couple of points. To my knowledge, we've never brought this to Layton as an annexation petition into Layton. So to say that they've denied it, I don't think that's accurate. We would still be open to possibly going to Layton, but we think it's a better fit in Kaysville. And let's see, the other thing I wanted to bring up is, we think it's a great, a great addition to Kaysville, beautiful area, and we have been working, like I mentioned earlier, I know we're not talking about the development, but we have been working and talking to the neighbors, hearing concerns, met with them, and we'd be more than happy to meet with the group, because I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding as to high density and what that would possibly mean. That's not our intent, is to build any kind of high density there.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, so one of the things that I think I've heard from residents in the area and part of this meeting this evening is what will be there. And I don't think we'll even have before us a true consideration of what is in there if it's not on this map to begin with. And so that is one of the reasons staff's recommending approval at this stage to move forward, at least with this part of the process, so that we can then further get the answers that I think everyone's really looking for as to what it might look like.
Okay, thank you. If there's not any more comments, I'll close the public hearing.
So again, is this something, this doesn't require an up-down vote then either, does it?
Apologize.
Yeah, just a recommendation.
Correct. This is a recommendation. The council will have to give the final approval on this.
I get it. All right.
But I think, just to clarify, maybe I just wasn't listening entirely, but I think what the point is there are a lot of valid concerns this is not the time that we would address those concerns. And some of the concerns that were raised, we actually might agree with, but we're just not at the stage where we think about those things yet. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
So when they're annexed in, will they be zoned?
When the annexation, the actual annexation petition is considered, typically there's a zone request associated with that. We do have to assign a zone in our town once it's annexed. We can't have unzoned property. The state law states that if we do not designate a zone at that time, it takes on the longest contiguous boundary, which
would be a park.
Which would be this property here. Is it A1?
I think it's public use at the Wilderness Park.
Wilderness Park.
But we would.
But typically, we designate a zone with the annexation process, so it comes
Right.
into the city zoned.
So it's kind of like we're not thinking of a rezone, but we are thinking about the similar things like what kind of zone do we want here?
Right.
At that time.
At that time.
At that time. Right.
So on the back page.
So tonight, I mean, we're supposed to give a recommendation.
Yes, whether to add this to the policy plan, which would allow us to consider an annexation. If for some reason you felt that we don't even want to consider ever annexing this property, then that's why you would not recommend approval at this point.
So it's still not a given because these
It's
still
still
have
not
to
a
be
given.
brought back before us.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So my understanding then is we need to look at these 6 criteria in the annexation policy plan and answer the questions related to those 6.
Actually, no.
Oh,
No.
no.
You're
Okay.
That
saying
would be the actual annexation.
Oh, the back part.
See, that's what I was thinking. We need to do it because I'm financially, I'm concerned about the financial implications of this and tax revenue versus expenditure out for services.
Okay, so then I'm in left field. Explain.
This could be the time to modify the questions that get asked during the annexation
Okay.
process. So those could be added to or removed so that plan itself is what's being
I was
modified.
confused too. I thought we had asked those tonight and have answers before.
At least I'm glad I'm not the only one. Okay.
Now,
So this lets them
Unfortunately,
move.
you're thinking like I was.
This
If
allows
you-
the city to move forward and research all
and
of
ask,
those.
ask those questions.
Got it.
Now, if you look at those questions and say,
I need more.
there's no way these are going to pan out asking these questions, then
Why would we do it? Yeah.
Yeah.
then you could consider not even adding it to the policy plan. But what tonight's action does is say, okay, now let's go ask those questions when the petition is submitted, which in this case it will be.
Or recommend or denial. Doesn't really. I mean, it's just moving it forward, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Right.
Or
Still.
not.
Back to the if.
Yeah.
4.5.
So are we asking the question? Whatever we recommend and whatever the city council decides at this juncture, does the hatched area turn green after this stage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yay.
That's
Got it.
exactly what happens.
Hey, we just need colors. We just need to talk in colors. Okay.
And does it have to go to city council before you move forward with the answers, with the research on
Yes.
it? Okay.
They have to do this process, and then we'll start again with the actual annexation petition, which is where those questions need to be answered.
All right.
Okay.
So do we need to make a formal motion then?
Yeah, recommendation.
All right, so I'll move that we forward a favorable recommendation to the city council for the approval of a modification to the aforementioned modification of the Kaysville City annexation policy plan and map of Kaysville City area with the changes desired of us, this body, the planning commission. Is that good?
And I'll second that with the reasoning because we need to find these other things out.
Correct.
So.
Clarification, are you wanting to include the items in the staff report
Sure.
in your recommendation?
Yes, I'll
Is that what the staff would suggest?
So I'll just read it verbatim then.
Just list them, and then we'll be like, yeah okay.
Map.
Everything in here.
Everything in here, right. Exactly.
We all got it?
We got it, right. Map of Kaysville City expansion area to be modified to include Highway 89 right-of-way between existing Kaysville City residents and area currently shown in red hash marks, and the text of the annexation policy plan be updated to address comments relevant to its most recent amendment process, i.e. statement addressing any comments, consideration of adding 60 additional acres, potential expansion areas east of Highway 89. There you have it. So,
very good.
Second. Or you already seconded.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's me. Aye.
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 Okay. Okay. We are finished with public hearing. Request for a variance from section 1712.6 regarding the placement of an accessory building on the corner lot for Zach Jacobs.
Hello.
Hi.
Zach Jacobs. I guess to start out, I guess I kind of just want to go over kind of my due diligence in putting my shed there. I don't know if any of you guys have driven by it or not.
Before you get
staff,
can we get some input from the staff first?
Yeah, sure, please.
Sure.
Just a quick background. See the property highlighted here on the map. It's a corner lot. I believe there's been a shed placed in this corner right here. Current ordinance says that on side yards abutting a street, the side yard shall be maintained at 20 feet wide, which would put this shed less than 20 feet from the right-of-way line. The shed is installed. That's what the request is, to consider a variance to allow that shed to be located in that location with the ordinance stating 20-foot setback. I have the variance procedure in your packet. As you're aware, has to meet all that criteria for us to grant a variance.
Okay. Like I said, I'm Zach Jacobs. I actually want to just kind of go over the process that I went through, my due diligence of placing my shed where I did. So after looking on Kaysville's website and what it is, which Kaysville's website, I would maybe suggest needs a refreshing.
It's coming up.
Very challenging to negotiate through there. So I went under the accessory buildings, found the thing right off the bat. It said anything under 200 square feet does not require a city permit, and 1 foot from the property line. So at that point, I thought, all right, okay. So then I went to the shed company I was working with, a local Kaysville company here, talked to them, made plans for the shed, asked them what their understanding is. They said the same thing, 1 foot property line. They did say, call the city and double check with them. So I did that. I called the zoning office, talked to a female and said, hey, here's where I live, here's my address. This is where I want to put it. What's the zoning rule? She said 1 foot from the property line. I said, okay. Is that from my neighbor and from the side? She said yes. So at that point, I went forward with it. And consequently, when I received the letter in the mail, I was quite shocked, being that I thought that I did my due diligence. So my first concern is, well, maybe I missed something that it is a safety thing. Maybe it is blocking the street. So I live right across the street from Endeavor Elementary. You can see the crosswalk is technically in my backyard. So the first thing I did is I went to the school and talked to the principal and said, is there anyone that has expressed concern to you? Has the cross guard said, hey, this is a concern, kids are in danger here? She said, absolutely not. She said she's shocked that someone would complain about it. So at that point, I wrote up a letter to my neighbors saying, hey, this is what I'm trying to do is get a variance for where my shed is located. Took it around to all my neighbors. Actually, Matt Anderson lives in my neighborhood. His wife signed it. And I had, how many did I have here that signed it? 64 individuals in our neighborhood sign the variance letter, which I think was included in the packet. Hopefully you guys got. Plus photos that shows that it's not blocking, the street. There's no obstructions of the view. The crosswalk on both sides is clear and open. Me having young kids who cross that street every day, that's my biggest concern as well. And seeing that, I didn't see that as a concern. It also, I didn't see any red flags in where I put it, in the fact that after I got this letter, and actually just the last day or two, I drove around Kaysville, maybe less than an hour, and I have pictures of 45. I'm sure within all of your guys' homes, there's one that's in the same situation on a corner. There's 45 different ones that I took pictures of that are in the same situation. So I didn't see any red flags of where I put it based on Kaysville and the way it is. And so I would say, come to you and say, I'm trying to apply for a variance. I've put the shed in, I did the work, obviously the money and so forth, and would love to keep it where it's at.
That shed on a concrete foundation?
Right now, it's actually not on concrete. In talking to the people, I thought about pouring cement, but I actually just have it on gravel. But it does have, I've ran curbing around it. I've actually added in front of the area, which you can't see from this photo. I don't know if the other side, I have a flower box, like a planter box, the area that's going to be. So in time, as you can actually see from this side, there's going to be a tree that's growing there. So, this shed's going to be hid for the most part.
Does it have power?
It does not have power.
Can I just jump in? This is what I think needs to happen here. And I guess let me back up and say and get some foundation for where I'm going. So the city staff makes an administrative decision to deny this because they look at the city code and they look at the facts of the shed on the lot and they say this objectively does not meet city code. So that's why we're here for a variance. And so we, as an appeal body, have to act in a quasi-judicial manner, which means we get to be like judges a little bit. And we get to say, okay, we get to apply the law to the facts, kind of like the city staff just did, except for it's a different law. It's the variance criteria. And there's 5 criteria for a variance. And it is a very difficult standard to meet because you have to meet every single one. And there's a good outcome to this, I promise, for you, in my mind. But in my mind, for the variance criteria, in acting in a quasi-judicial manner as we are tasked with doing right now, I don't see any way that you can meet the variance standard on a number of levels, and I'm happy to explain why I think that. But to me, that's besides the point. And what I'm suggesting is I don't think your shed needs to be moved. I agree with the comments that it's not a safety concern. I agree that it's not an eyesore, which is evidenced by all the signatures we've seen and emails we've gotten from neighbors. I don't think that it's a problem. But we also don't have legislative authority as this body. We can't change the code. The city council can. Hold on, I'll listen to you. Just let me finish. So what I think has to happen is you're just in the wrong forum. I think, in my opinion, we should deny the variance. And I get the frustration. It would be frustrating to me, and it's probably frustrating to you. What I'm saying is you should appeal the decision. The decision that the staff made, you should appeal. And the funny thing is that appeal comes back to us. And once you have appealed an administrative decision and it comes back to us, now we have all sorts of leeway, in my opinion. With a variance, we have very little discretion. If you appeal it, though, under a different set of criteria, we can do what we think is just and equitable. And in my mind, it's just and equitable to interpret the code in a way, and even if we have to twist the code interpretation, and I've looked at one word that seems where I could, in good faith, twist the code in your favor, I'm saying I think you need to appeal it and come back to our board where we have more discretion on appeal as opposed to a variance. Does that make sense?
As weird as it sounds, that does make sense.
So
that was one thing that I guess I should have brought up too, is meeting those criteria is going to be very challenging. To say hardship and all this different.
It's impossible.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
In my opinion, the tough thing for me is an accessory building, the way it's written, is not look different if it's under 200 square feet, 100 square feet, or a 4-car garage. Like, it's written all the same according to the
Yeah, and we may agree with that type of logic, but we don't have the discretion to agree with it right now under a variance application.
Yeah, we're held to some rules and standards of our own that we have to meet every one of those in this case, every one of those 5 he's talking about. We can't change that. We can't go outside of that. So we have to follow those and meet it.
Per
like
the
I
letter.
said, it's per the letter.
Right.
And per the letter, it's not going to happen.
So if I do appeal, which I'm good with, we come back, give me the process of that appeal.
Well, and what I will first, let me say before I answer that, I haven't talked to Lyle or Andy or anybody at the city about this. So I'm kind of going rogue, and what I'm kind of saying is I think the staff, and I don't know if the staff directed you to file a variance application or not. I think the staff should have directed you to appeal their decision to us. And the funny thing is, if this has passed, I would suggest we somehow say that the timeline was told, because you have 10 days to appeal their decision from the date that they made it. If that has passed, I would say let's somehow equitably toll that deadline so that it can be brought to us.
From that date or from the date that we deny?
It says, well, 17-4-5, it talks about making an appeal, and it says, such appeal shall be taken within 10 calendar days from the date of the action appealed from by filing with the officer from whom the appeal is taken, and with the Planning Commission a notice of appeal specifying the ground thereof. So I read that as 10 days from the date the city staff says you're out of compliance.
Well, that's probably...
Yeah. Well, and they did quickly respond to our outreach, and it was at my suggestion that we pursue this process.
Okay. And so I would say it's equitably told, the time frame. In other words, they met their requirement of filing it within a certain amount of time, and it's not their fault that we're telling them to go back and start another process. At least that's what I'm suggesting. And you know, candidly, part of the reason why I'm suggesting this is we each get. Can I just borrow this? There's this book, Utah Citizens Guide to Land Use Regulation. It was written by Craig Call, who was at the time, does not anymore, I don't think, the Utah State Private Property Ombudsman. Right. He talks very specifically about variances and says essentially what I've said, and he even suggests go through a route where the deciding body, which is us, has more discretion. And what I've found, at least, and I appreciate staff pointed me to this because I didn't find it right off. There is a process in the city code that gives us more discretion than a variance does. Here, now let me talk on the other hand. It's like, why do we really want to be so bureaucratic to make these two wonderful gentlemen, because what I've said also applies to the Thompson one, just what's coming up next.
Correct. It's the exact same.
It's the exact same, right. So do we really want to be this bureaucratic to make them come back, jump through a hoop so that we can come back and basically have the same discussion and rubber stamp it? Well, unfortunately, I think we have to follow the code, and I see the route of following the code, but doing something equitable here is what I've suggested. So,
I have a question for the commission, and that is, then when we had that one a while back that we were all remembering, was this not something we could have also said to them, or did we not feel like it was as benign as this one is?
I think we could have. I think we could have said that, but in my opinion, had it come back through the appeals process, that one was more egregious than these. And so that one was different.
Yeah.
It was more egregious because it was in the front yard, basically.
Front yard.
And they could have put it in a number of other places, that just seemed different.
They deliberately chose to put it there so it wouldn't interfere with the other stuff, and it was no fence.
And in contrast,
and the neighbor was
in contrast to this one, the neighbors in that one were opposed to it. Multiple. Yeah. This one, we've had neighbors saying, "Hey, this looks good."
Yeah, just leave it.
Yeah.
I just think it's important to have that on the record.
I agree.
And the one complaint we did get, because I went out there. If you saw somebody out taking pictures and snooping around, that was me.
I didn't see anyone take pictures. Because all the construction's behind us. Who knows what's going on?
I mean, the band, everything, the visibility, I agree, there is not a blind side in there. And when I drove in my car, I walked, got out a little bit, and there was a kid with a Captain America shield riding a bicycle that if he goes and tells his mom and dad there's some creeper out there, I promise it wasn't. I was taking pictures of this and trying to get a feel for it. The shed doesn't block or obstruct even pulling out of that driveway. The fence does. If anything obstructs, it was the fence. It wasn't the shed. And so I hadn't thought of it the way that it's been presented, but to me that would make sense.
Which the fence, let me say, they put up because they have a pool. Right. I mean, I finished my half portion, but they have a pool, and so they had to put a fence up, so I carried it on. So it was coming up no matter what.
My concern was, if we just look at the variance, they have to move their shed. I mean, that's the effect of it.
That's
the variance is denied, and they have to move their shed, and that's a lot of money. And I'm thinking, that's ridiculous. That doesn't make sense. And so I am personally not as comfortable twisting the variance language because I don't think we have discretion to do that as much. I think I personally, maybe you guys disagree with me, and that's fine, great. No. I'm more comfortable granting this in a different form where the code that exists gives us that latitude.
And that's through the appeal process.
Right. So I'll just read one part of the appeal process. It says, so when something comes to us on appeal, let's assume it's timely filed, everything's, procedurally fine. It says, the Planning Commission shall find whether there is substantial evidence that an error has been made, meaning that the city staff erred in their decision, which I'm not saying you guys erred. I'm just saying I want to do something equitable here. And then it says, the Planning Commission may affirm, reverse, or modify the action of the staff as it seems just and equitable, and exercise all rights of any other officer or commission. So I see that as we have the ability to reverse what they decided if we can somehow say that it was wrong, as it seems just and equitable. And then the broader question, and I get maybe we're opening a can of worms here, is maybe something legislatively has to change. Maybe the city council has to look at this requirement that creates this circumstance and revise the code. That's not our purview. But if this is happening in 2 places right across from each other and 45 other places, maybe, and we haven't had legions of complaints, maybe the code needs to be modified to more narrowly address the issue that is the concern on corner lots, because it's obviously not narrowly tailored enough if these circumstances are happening everywhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And if we end up getting 45 applications for a variance, that's going to outdo our chicken variances.
That was a combined drive, just taking a friend or our children to a friend's house and visiting family.
This is driving home from work.
Either way, I get that. That's just an anecdote, but it's probably relatively accurate.
What's that?
Would you like to come up and make
I
a...
was just going to clarify that. It wasn't every street in Kaysville.
Yeah. He's the next one on the agenda.
Yeah.
This is number 8.
So the city staff hasn't said a whole lot. I'm happy to hear what you guys say if I'm completely going rogue.
Just a couple comments.
Yes.
First of all, we agree that the shed probably has no impact whether it's there or somewhere else on the property. It's behind the fence. The fence is clearly legal under our ordinance, but we believe the ordinance is fairly clear that it's not in compliance. The next line after when you quit reading in the appeal procedure is it says, only decisions applying, administering, and interpreting this title may be appealed. Appeals may not be used to waive or modify the terms requirements of the title. So I understand what you're saying. I think it's a reasonable approach, but you need to be very, very careful how you grant even an appeal. There has to be evidence that we interpreted the code incorrectly or that we applied it incorrectly. There may be room for some interpretation here, but I agree more with your second comment, is if this is not a problem and it's occurring and we're not getting complaints, then probably our code needs to be looked at. Now, the part that I don't agree with you, it's very much in the Planning Commission's purview to recommend ordinance changes when they find that a land use provision is outdated or non-functioning. We have always in Kaysville been very patient and willing to work with people who are out of compliance. We sometimes get in trouble for that, but I think it's a good policy. We've done it on more than one occasion where we've allowed a non-compliant situation to exist while a modification to the code was reviewed through the process. Goes through that process and it's determined not to modify it, or the modification doesn't make it legal, then they're out of compliance and enforcement would pick up at that time. So I appreciate what you said. If you think there is an interpretation of the code that would fit in this situation, that's a good process to go through. Just keep in mind, it applies universally at that point.
Well,
we need to look at all the circumstances and make sure we don't create something that we don't intend to. I agree it's clear here. It's even clearer on the other one. But my personal opinion is a modification or a amendment to the actual code would allow all those issues to be brought forward and make sure we're not opening the door for something we don't intend to.
That's probably a smart way to go, because I understand the reason for the code, the setback requirements on corners. You have to maintain that line of sight and that triangle. You have to have that, but it may not always be 30 feet. It might be,
depending on the curvature of the road.
Curvature of the road. It might be 5 feet. It could be 10 feet. It's that isn't applicable in every situation, every circumstance, because the next house that we'll be hearing, that one even more so is out of any line of sight than yours is. I mean, the challenge you have, and we'll get to him in a minute, the challenge you have is it's right on a crosswalk, and that's one of the issues, the safety concern there. But still, because of the curvature of the road and how it goes, and even that T to intersection, I don't think that there's a line of sight issue created by the shed itself, and particularly the neighbor next to you. And so I don't think you can. I do think there needs to be some allowances, and maybe that is a code issue that but then it becomes on, in every one of them there's judgment call, because you can't write code that's going to fit every single situation.
Which is why in part there's an appeal process. But so Andy, if we look at 7 again, my thought is I agree we can't just waive or modify the requirements of the code, and that's not what I would be doing. What I would be saying is, I guess to address what I hear you're saying, and I'd be curious to hear if you agree that I've addressed your concerns, is we would say the current code as it's written is ambiguous, and I could explain where I think that is. It's a stretch, but I think it could be said to be ambiguous, and therefore it can be interpreted in 2 ways. Staff interpreted it one way, I'm interpreting it a different way, and so it's not clear. Therefore, right now, they get to we fall in favor of the interpretation that lets them keep their sheds where they are, and then instead of setting a precedent, which I don't know that this body sets precedent, I don't know that we would have to make that same determination on another one, but let's just assume we do. Between the time we set the precedent and when the time the code changes, that's the only window of time we're worried about where we have to keep following the precedent. And that assumes that the code would change, but I'm saying we interpret it in their favor now, or when they come back on an appeal, and then we suggest that the city council fix the problem in the code that creates this issue. And as soon as that legislative decision is made, as soon as it's fixed, then we can move forward and hopefully avoid the number of these that I assume we have now. Does that make sense, and what do you say to that?
But you're thinking that then they need to do the appeal, or just let them be on standby till the ordinance is changed?
Well, so
I think they would have to go through the formal appeal process from the way that I'm understanding
it.
I
mean, yeah, because I don't know if I didn't hear you or wasn't paying attention or whatever. We can't just have all these people out of compliance with code and then change code and retroactively grandfather people in. Can we do that?
Yes, once the code is changed, they're in compliance with the new code, they're good. You can't retroactively legislate somebody out of compliance. If we change the law to say, I don't know, the setback on your home now goes from 30 feet to 35 feet, you can't go make everybody move their house back 5 feet.
But there has to be something that initiates that change, though, and this would be these two particular cases.
Yeah, and so we can put enforcement in abeyance while we're reviewing a modification to the code.
Which is initiated by these two gentlemen and their specific situation.
Then, and at the end of the day, that accomplishes what we're looking to accomplish. And maybe, if that's the way we want to go, then what we say here is, actually what the staff says is, Planning Commission, we're not going to enforce this, so this item isn't before you, or do we deny the variance?
Since there is an actual variance request, I think it's appropriate to
deny the variance.
Or make a decision.
Unfortunately, make a decision, which I think you've stated, and I agree that it's not going to meet the criteria. And then allow the staff direct the staff to start working on new code that would address this issue and formally place enforcement of these two situations in abeyance until the new code has been properly vetted.
And in theory, any others that might come before, if any did
something
come
came
before.
in that,
It's like, hey guys, just
almost a moratorium on enforcement of this particular issue until it's been reviewed through the ordinance change process.
And then
maybe your pictures would help us when we're modifying the code.
So then they wouldn't have to come back before us.
No, unless the code either didn't change when it was all said and done, or the change left them out of compliance for some reason anyway. Then at that point, enforcement would be reenacted and we'd deal with it
but
in
I
whatever
think
manner at that point.
The whole point we would be trying to suggest to the city council, write an ordinance that makes these in compliance and others like them.
Yes.
So that probably wouldn't happen, is my guess.
Actually, staff's the one that's drafting the.
Well, but they just say, here's some language that works, guys. You guys get to make the decision.
Right.
That's city council.
Right.
I think you'd probably look at what other cities have done and how it's been treated. You guys are really good at doing that.
It's just
do a lot of homework.
Again, my belief is if we go through that process, it allows us to look at all the situations and angles, not just these two.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
And I think that works better for me because, ultimately it accomplishes what I was trying to accomplish. So.
Yeah, I believe it does.
But to say if the code doesn't change, or can I still appeal? Like if you guys say, all right, we're not going to change it, can I then appeal? Or
yeah, because technically the final decision wouldn't be made until that point.
And I personally don't see that happening where you would need to appeal. But what this commissioner says is, I would encourage you to appeal under 17-4-5. And I would at least try in my power to interpret the decision of staff in a way that favors you. But I don't think we're going to have to go down that road.
And then there's a whole other thing about it would be really great number one, if all citizens thought to go in looking to see what the regulations would be to put a shed in their yard, which many, frankly, wouldn't even think to go looking. So that's one thing. And then another thing is, you did go look, but there was something on the website that was you thought was otherwise, huh?
Yeah, I mean, to find 1762 is not very easy. I mean, it sends you to a PDF. I mean, literally, after today, I was trying to find it again to see how challenging it was. I couldn't find it. So.
And we do have a new website going up in a few soon.
It's supposed to be with the ordinances, something.
So I would say, I mean, that's the problem. Is I mean, I looked on the website trying to clarify exactly where it is, knowing that Kaysville City's got to have some sort of zoning law for where it'd be. And then when I called in, and then they said, yeah, 1 foot from the property line. And I said, oh, is that both sides? And they're like, yeah. So, I mean, I did try to figure out where I should put this thing.
And, I mean, that's sort of an age-old problem.
Yeah.
You know, citizens who don't deal with municipal code trying to jump into the ocean of it. You're not alone in doing that, and you aren't the first, you won't be the last. And so I don't know that even can be entirely alleviated. I think the online, whatever it's called, system we have is a step in the right direction, but there's always going to be that happening.
Well, do you want to make motions then to deny both these? Josh?
Yeah, I will. Do you want me to?
Just throwing it out there.
We have two motions. They are two separate.
Yes, and is there? Do we want?
I mean,
the other
discussion is
gentleman
exactly
to-
the same, I think.
Probably.
Unless he wants to talk.
Yeah, we're
to
two
us.
in the one. I mean, you know.
I'm just curious what's
Here
so
come-
we can appeal, correct?
Yeah.
If I guess my confusion is, I just want to know what is the best process for us to try to keep our sheds in the same place. If we're just hanging out and waiting for the code to be looked at and readdressed, I'm fine with you denying it and doing that. I don't want to cause headache for you guys as well as for us. Like
That's
I'm
where
still
we're
hanging
at.
out.
That's where we're at right now.
Okay.
Where the variance will be denied. X amount of time will go by when the code is reviewed, retooled, whatever. You'll fall into compliance when that code becomes law. Problem solved.
And in the meantime, it's the staff really that gets to decide when or what they enforce of the code. They're just not going to actively pursue enforcement because there's no need if it's going to change.
Right.
So you guys just sort of are going to
kind of in limbo at the moment.
You're going to sit in limbo. Yeah. Right.
Big deal.
Is on hold.
Yeah, all of that, all of the statute of limitations, for lack of a better description, is basically what they are. Is told. They just are put on. They're just put on pause. Yeah.
We are being recorded, so if you need
I
them
was just
here.
saying, is this
documented?
This is live.
I mean, I called in. I called in before I got the 1 foot rule, and that was wrong. So I just want to make sure I got.
You've heard it
this is
from
live.
staff
Okay.
that you have
Variance
that
is
time.
denied, do we have to appeal and then sit idle, or do we just sit idle?
You probably don't have to appeal. You sit idle.
Both ways, so I just want to make sure.
You sit idle and wait for the code to change, which I think it will in your favor. And then at that point, you're in compliance.
And then if it doesn't, then you'd appeal.
And then if it doesn't, then you have to appeal. Yeah.
Isn't there a time frame on the appeal, though? I just don't want that to lapse.
Well, I'm saying that's put on pause. Right now, the clock isn't ticking on that time.
Just want to make sure.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lauren.
All right.
Fire them up.
So I'll do two different ones. I move that we deny the request for a variance regarding the placement of an accessory building on a corner lot for Zach Jacobs at 1969 South, 25 West, and that we ask staff to review the code and to consider the change. Is that said well enough?
I think we have a pretty good idea of what the intent is.
Well, you can teach me better wording if you want.
Have a second. Do you want to start?
Did we need clarification at all? Okay, aye.
We told you what to say. We should know.
She's got it all written down anyway. She's already done it. Aye.
So, was it seconded by somebody?
I seconded it.
Okay, great. Aye.
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 All right, and then I will also move that we deny the request for a variance from section, sorry, I have so many papers, from section 17-12-6 regarding the placement of an accessory building on a corner lot for Dean Sean Thompson at 14 West 1950 South, and also request our staff to review the code and to consider an update.
Second.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for the input.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks.
staying and
Yeah,
waiting.
and all the work you did. Good job.
Okay, we have a call to the public.
And I think we still need to approve minutes, don't we? We need to approve the minutes still?
We already did that.
Oh, we did do it? Okay.
My name's Dean Wall again. Just for most of yours, update, the west corridor will not go to 200 North. The last proposal that I heard from UDOT was that they were going to the exit and entry is going to be the north end of Farmington on the very west side and on the very south end of Kaysville. And unless Kaysville and Farmington get together and come up with a way to make that exit and entrance onto that, that will go away. If that's not funded within the next year, that'll actually go away with UDOT. So 200 North has been not even considered. I mean, it's been considered, but UDOT has decided not to even consider it at 200 North. So the way it is right now, and Andy could probably tell you a little bit more about it, but the way it is right now, it's going to be right on the very edge, the very north edge of Farmington, and the very southwest edge of Kaysville, as of now, unless that's changed.
The interchange at North Farmington and South Kaysville out by the sewer plant is an addition to the Second North interchange. Second North has always been shown and has continued to be shown as an interchange. This would be an addition to that.
So it would be a West Shepherd interchange,
as opposed to Grover's
in that vicinity.
Or Glover's Lanes.
Yeah. Really, right, just south of the sewer plant is where that's proposed to go.
Actually, so south of the Henry Walker, where they observe that
south
corridor.
and west of the new Henry Walker development.
Yeah.
So the Second North is back.
Second North has never been removed.
Never left.
Oh, okay. Then I
It
apologize.
probably was confusing because they talked about this other one,
right?
The Second North one. This was in addition to Second North.
Oh, in addition. Thank you.
If you're correct, then we do have some fighting to do, but.
Okay.
Check it, because that would be a big deal.
Okay, any other matters, reports?
No, just we're back on for the 12th is our next regularly scheduled meeting. And then something to keep in mind, I got reminders today from the Utah EPA. If anyone's interested in their conference at Park City towards the end of October, I'll send out reminders to get on that. I think it's been sent out before, but if you are interested, there's always good training opportunities at those conferences.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you.
10 o'clock, isn't it?